Dana Raff reports.
We're in a procession of maybe 1,000 people. There are fighters carrying 2 symbolic coffins, empty because Hania and his bodyguard are being buried in Qatar. People are waving flags from almost every Palestinian faction. And one of the speakers chanting, "Rest, Hania, we will carry on your struggle." Jana Raff, NPR News, Beirut.
Weather forecasters are tracking a tropical wave in the Caribbean. It's headed for southern Florida. It could become a tropical depression this weekend. Some parts of southern Florida could get 5 inches of rain or more. Governor Ron DeSantis has already declared a state of emergency for much of Florida. California fire officials say the Park Fire burning north of Sacramento has now scorched more than 620 square miles. More than 530 structures have been destroyed. From member station KQED, Kevin Stark reports this is the 5th largest wildfire in California's modern history.
Looking ahead, the big concern is weather, with a heat wave forecast this weekend with the possibility for thunderstorms. Smoke hanging over the fire has smothered it, moderating its spread. Battalion Chief Mark Brunton with CAL FIRE says strong gusty winds will push the smoke out.
It will pull the lid off the pot, if you will, and now we have a situation where it becomes hotter, drier, where we will anticipate fire behavior to increase, intensify.
The fire started after a man allegedly pushed a burning car into a gully. Under California's 3 strikes law, he could face 25 years to life, if convicted. For NPR News, I'm Kevin Stark in Northern California.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrials are down about 900 points. This is NPR.
Good morning with the latest from the GBH Newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. The ALS Ice Bucket Challenge took the country by storm 10 years ago, and the anniversary was celebrated yesterday at Fenway Park, where it all began. Pete Frates, who was diagnosed with ALS in 2012, co-founded the fundraiser where people find themselves or film themselves dumping ice water all over their head. Former NFL quarterback Matt Ryan was at yesterday's celebration. He met Pete at Boston College, where Pete played baseball, and they remained close friends. He now works alongside the Family Foundation to bring awareness to the disease.
We're going to find a cure. It's coming. But we also need to provide care for the families and for the patients that are going through it. And it's incredible what the Frates Family Foundation has done to assist with that care.
Frates died in 2019. The Ice Bucket Challenge has raised more than $220 million for ALS research. Keep it going. And the Pan Mass Challenge kicks off several locations tomorrow, with thousands of cyclists from beginner to experienced taking to the roads to raise money for the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Many will start in Sturbridge, Mass. and ride all the way to Provincetown. The Cape leg of the ride kicks off on Sunday as cyclists depart from Bourne to P-Town to complete the final 79 miles of the 186-mile journey. So far, the challenge has raised $47 million this year, with a goal of $75 million since its inception in 1980. The challenge has donated $972 million to Dana-Farber. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Amazon Business, committed to being a digital purchasing solution for businesses so that growing the business is the main focus and not admin and paperwork. Learn about smart business buying at amazonbusiness.com.
Welcome to Boston Public Radio. We are live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm Jim Browdy. Marjorie is off. Marjorie would be here, by the way, but she is busy doom scrolling through what the legislature didn't do when it left for its 5-month vacation. Sitting in is Andrea Kerbal. How are you, Andrea?
I am well. How are you, Jim?
Nice to see you. Former Secretary of Public Safety and former Sheriff of Suffolk County. In about 20 or 30 minutes, you are going to hear from the Silk Road Ensemble Global Music Workshop. And I'll tell you, you have never heard music like this in your life. We heard them at rehearsal. You're not going to want to miss it. Then a little bit later in the show, Parkland shooting survivor David Hogg, founder of March for Our Lives, and more recently, founder of Leaders We Deserve, hoping to elect young progressives to Congress and state legislatures. He'll zoom in to talk to us as well. And next Tuesday at the library, Mayor Wu will join us for an hour of Ask the Mayor. In our world of never-ending misery, which we talk about every day, the Summer Games in Paris have been the shining reminder of what the Olympics can do to lift our spirits and unite us from the comfort of our own couches. That's exemplified in the triumph of the amazing Simone Biles. After stepping back in Tokyo, coming back to win gold after gold at 27 years old with such incredible grace, confronting mental health challenges, talking about them, inspiring others. You know, we see it in the athletes from around the world cheering on Ukraine, in the competitors from North and South Korea posing for a selfie, in the players from the 13-year-old nation of South Sudan making a name for themselves in men's basketball, despite not having an indoor court anywhere in their country. Andrea told me that this morning. It's unbelievable. Our number is 877-301-8970. What have this year's games meant to you as a viewer at home? How great is it watching athletes like Biles shine in their moment? Or Stephen, how do you say his last name? Nadarasic? Whatever, from Worcester, making the
I did not know who you were talking about.
most sorry of his Olympic moment on the pommel horse and his nerdy glasses and Rubik's Cube. And also, how are you watching? Is it bringing you together with your friends, your family? Is it blissful one-person viewing? What is it? Or are we dead wrong and you don't give a damn about the whole thing? The number is 877-301-8970. You're watching a lot of this. What is this doing for you?
I am. I mean, I always watch some portion of both the Winter and the Summer Olympics, but it's usually pretty targeted. This is the first time in a while that I've watched as wide a variety.
Why?
I don't know. Part of it is because I watched the opening ceremonies in Paris and was so impressed by how well France pulled that whole thing off. They did it with sort of the typical French flair, where there are certain things that you go, you know, that's a little Cirque du Soleil, like I'm not sure I kind of get this. But it was just absolutely beautiful. And I had been reading about how they had been preparing and all of the green initiatives and the housing initiatives, all that's going to come from, you know, when everybody leaves and the Olympics are over. And it was great, and it just made me want to watch a lot more of the sports. And so I have been, and it really has been uplifting and you know, wonderful. I've been cheering for the Ukrainian, no matter what the sport, just cheering because they're there and they're, you know, probably worried about relatives, and you know, it's just been great.
Well, I sort of feel like it's a respite from the misery, as I said at the top, beyond how great it is on its own terms. First of all, this Biles, she is one of the most inspirational characters. And you also pointed out to me this morning, which I hadn't seen because I went to bed early last night. After she wins, she says, "I love my black job."
Right.
So obviously, for those who are not paying attention to what that means, Google it and you'll figure it out. Here she is. Here's a clip of her, Simone Biles, speaking at a press conference after winning gold for her all-around championship.
At the end of the day, it is crazy that I am in the conversation of greatest of all athletes, because I just still think I'm Simone Biles from Spring, Texas, that loves to flip. You know, when people say, well, that loves to flip, when people say that, you often say that is the phoniest thing ever. It sounds so real and sincere from this 27-year-old woman. It's incredible. Almost gives me chills.
Well,
you know?
when you think about it, you know, it usually takes, it's often when celebrities of one stripe or another go through something that it calls attention to it for the rest of the world. And here she was brave enough and self-aware enough to pull herself out of the Tokyo Olympics, and then had idiots criticizing her about it when she knew she wasn't where she should be mentally in order to do it. And then she comes back. What that says to people is, you can get through really tough times, but know when it's time to step back. And then maybe you can come back even stronger. I mean, what she does in terms of role modeling, not just for gymnastics, but for everybody, is really quite astounding. And she's so unassuming. She's so regular, you know?
It's hard to say so unassuming when she is the most assuming. I know that's not the right word for her performance. It's just, you know, and also speaking of the mental health thing, just to stay on it for a minute, how brave and inspirational she's been. Trenny Casey, who's going to be with us on Monday, who is doing part of the emceeing of the Olympics on E and CNBC. She's had mental health issues and has talked about them openly, does a lot of events with athletes who have the courage like Biles to do it. But it matters so much. We talk about, how athletes shouldn't be role models. They are role models to lots of people, often in negative ways. And this woman's courage at the same time that she's come back and doing this thing is just, it's otherworldly, as I often say. 877-301-8970. Here's Lucy in Worcester texting. After all the chaos that was the month of July, the Olympics have been a welcome respite. I'm obsessed with Worcester's own nerdy Pommel horse guy and the dead-on Gen X Turkish target shooter. Have you seen this guy? He's got none of the equipment on.
Right.
He's got I think it's his right hand with his gun, and his left hand is in his pocket, as if he's just out for a stroll.
And he's just wearing like a T-shirt.
It's a T-shirt.
Yeah.
It's pretty,
Yeah.
I don't know what his name is, but it's pretty great. 877-301-8970. And by the way, don't be shy. If you have no interest in this and you think we're doing pipe dream stuff and being absurdly optimistic about just a couple weeks in history, feel free to give us a buzz.
Let's talk to Ryan in Somerville.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi there, Dan. Great to.
It's great to have you too.
I was just calling in as I've just been excitement for extend. I actually teach senior fitness classes in Malden, and when I did my class this morning, but it's like Olympic theme music.
Hey, Ryan, I got to do a horrible thing. I'm going to put you on hold for about a minute until one more call because the connection is bad. And don't go away. We're going to talk to one other caller and then come back to you and hope we have better connection. Emily in Westford, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, thank you. I'm a frequent caller, and I'm really happy to be on.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say I'm 76 years old, and I've watched a lot of Olympics, and the joy that this couple weeks brings me, especially this year, is significant in my life. And also, I love how the athletes are reaching out and congratulating those from other countries. It seems to have brought the world into a more unified and smaller place, and we realize that we're all the same.
That's pretty beautiful call, Emily. Thanks. What did you say about the Brazilian, is it gymnast?
Yeah, there's a Brazilian gymnast named Jade Andrade, the way that's the Brazilian pronunciation. We would say Andrade here. But I'm happy that Emily called because I was saying the exact same thing this morning. It's noticeable that they are congratulating each other, going out of their way sometimes after their event or after their routine to congratulate the other elite athletes in their group and being genuinely happy, even when they're not the person who's won or the person who has medaled. You see it in swimming. They cross the lanes to congratulate each other. They do know who the other top people in their sport, are. And it really is unifying to see it happen. And it might be more of a Gen Z thing. It just might be, somewhat generational. I don't know. But it's noticeable, and it makes you feel good when you're watching
Sort of like American politics, when they're crossing the aisle and hugging each other and doing all these warm things in the spirit of collaboration. It's beautiful. Ryan in Somerville, we're going to try you one more time. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Jim. Thanks so much for your patience.
Much better. Great.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was just calling in as I've been feeling, just as you both have, super inspired and just energized by the Olympics, between the stories about Simone Biles and Suni Lee, seeing Katie Ledecky out there just swimming and sitting that amazing time, and just use that as I actually teach senior exercise classes in Malden, and I use that as for like the Olympic music this morning, and I also was throwing in some let's do a little gymnast move here, to a lesser degree, of course, than Simone Biles, but it's just seeing the energy and smiles on my faces of my seniors this morning with that theme. It's just been fun, and it's been the positivity all overall has been great.
I'm really glad you stuck around. We could hear it in your voice. That was pretty great, Ryan. Thank you for the call. Can I speak? I often admit to being a fraud, and let me do it right now. The other day, I don't know if it was with you or with whom. I know it was with Marjorie. I was talking about how I don't quite understand why in no other part of the world do we celebrate people who came in second and third. We celebrate, and by the way, I don't mean we shouldn't say how great it is you're competing or whatever. It's just as odd. You win a third place, and it's a big deal. the Suni Lee thing, he just mentioned, I'm so thrilled she came in third and seems like such a great young woman. So I take back absolutely every ridiculous thing I said earlier this week. It's great. It's totally great, and I was wrong.
And also, when you're talking about the judging of these events where people are literally separated by 100th of a second.
I know.
It's almost a distinction without a difference to say, I was 100th of a second ahead of you, when I swam this time. You really should do at least the top 3.
Okay, and maybe the top 5, top 8, whatever. Okay,
sure,
let's not
top 10.
So Zoe, our colleague, has written us like a 400-word note, which I'm going to read. I am a broken record about the U.S. women's soccer team, but they're running a front line, that's attackers and midfielders, of all black women for the first time in history. One of whom, I didn't know this, is Trinity Rodman, Dennis Rodman's daughter.
Oh, wow.
Did you know that?
No.
One of whom fought back 8 years of injury to make it back to the starting 11, and they are having fun out there. It's an absolute delight to watch, especially as the U.S. men's soccer team, I didn't know this, just got knocked out after making it to the quarterfinals, first time in 20 years. Congratulations to Morocco. This is their first time ever making it this far in women's soccer. Women's soccer is just pure joy.
Now I have to watch women's soccer, which I had only caught a couple of snippets of. Now, because of Zoe, I have to watch.
Well, that's fair enough. 877-301-8970. Are the Olympics doing for you or to you what they're doing for me and Zoe and Andrea? And as I say, if they're not, don't hesitate. I'm usually the cynic about everything, but I can't be cynical about that. Let's go to Mike in Norwood. Hi.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, how you guys doing today?
Good.
Hey, I think at the end of the day, when it comes to this Olympics, and the medal counts and everything are great, but I think that the image of the strong woman should be what we take away from this, whether it's Simone Biles, who is strong enough to be a person who's at the best of the highest of her class, the best in her grade, to be able to step back and say, I need help, and get that. And then you kind of transfix that to the women's rugby medal and the great job that they did, and obviously the controversies with the boxing. Sometimes there are just strong women who can knock you down.
This is a horrible connection, too. For those who didn't hear, Mike Norwood said it's an opportunity to celebrate strong women. And he started with Simone Biles, talked about the women's rugby and some other women boxers, too. And it's totally true. You're watching women's rugby? I didn't even know there was women's rugby in the Olympics.
No, I haven't watched any rugby.
When do you do that?
After soccer, apparently, now that Zoe has told me that everything that I've been missing.
Before we take a break, Sandra, this is Sandra, our colleague, texting, great to see North and South Korea table tennis athletes take a selfie together.
I love that.
You know what I'm worried about? Are the North Koreans going to go home and get executed for, I'm serious about this, for doing this kind of thing?
I would certainly hope
Well, I would hope not too, but
but I have to say, I didn't say it out loud, but I did think that when I first heard the story, so I was a little worried.
And Benjamin in Brighton text, Jim, they may come in second or third, but that's second or third in the world. But that's a very fine point.
So Elisa from Norwell, I love this, says,
What'd you say?
I've been watching with my 9-year-old daughter. She hasn't really, quote unquote, found her thing in terms of sport, but last night she asked me, what sport should I do in the Olympics? I think she's feeling very inspired. And that's to the point of our last caller. It really does celebrate, strong women. And you can see there's role models aplenty for your sons and your daughters to see in the Olympics.
Were you here the day we talked about the 61-year-old table tennis player from China who moved to Luxembourg?
No.
And in I don't know how she did after the first round. Maybe you guys can check. She beat a 30-something table tennis player, 61 years old and whatever. Joel from Connecticut, we were talking about the joy we were getting. Joel from Connecticut texts and says, Jim just said he is wrong. That was pure joy for me. Well, thank you, Joel. We're here to make you happy.
And we're going to go to a break, but there's a 30-year-old or 31-year-old woman from Sweden who won in swimming. I think it was the 200 meters. Absolutely nobody thought that she was going to win. She won. She was crying. It was absolutely wonderful. We're going to take a break. We're celebrating the joy of the Summer Olympics in Paris. The conversation continues. Stick around. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
best of the best compete at the Olympics. World records are broken. Not so many this year, though. Don't blame the athletes, blame the shallow Olympic swimming pool.
Decisions for the Paris Games have not been taken in general to beat records.
All that and more news from Paris next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And The Art Drive, a juried open studio tour, today through Sunday. You can visit artists in their studios along the seacoast of Dartmouth and Westport. Learn more at the-art-drive.com. And Eversource, committed to helping businesses reach sustainability goals and lower their energy use through energy assessments and custom recommendations. Learn more at eversource.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Brody, Andrew Cabral in for Marjorie. Marjorie is back on Monday. In about 10 or 12 minutes, we're going to hear from a couple of players from the Silk Road Ensemble Global Musician Workshop. They are spectacular and really different. David Hogg is going to join us too, obviously Parkland shooting survivor, founder of March for Our Lives and Leaders We Deserve, which is working to elect young progressive leaders to Congress and state legislatures. Mayor Wu joins us on Tuesday. If you're just joining in, a couple of cynics are talking about the joy that the Olympics has brought them, a couple of cynics being me and Andrea Cabral, and we want to know what your take is, including if you're just not into it, tell us why. 877-301-8970. This anonymous texter could have been me, by the way. I have to laugh at myself because I'm so judgy on whether a gymnast stuck the landing. Meanwhile, I trip up the stairs and fall over putting on my underwear. That is exactly. You know, the only thing that's really hard for me, I don't know what that woman's name is, the woman on the Olympics team who I think won the floor exercise gold in the last Olympics. And she fell when, did you see?
Was it that? I thought that was Suni Lee.
No, it was not her. But it was really, it causes me great anxiety watching these kind. I like it like a swimming thing, because if you come in second or third or eighth, nothing horrible happened to you. You just came in second, third, or eighth. Right. You fall down in this thing, and that really causes me really.
What I think is funny is how quickly we adopt the language of the sport.
Totally.
So we sort of say stuck the landing like we've been saying in our whole lives.
Exactly right.
Like it's in our common parlance. And when you're watching it and you see somebody make a mistake, you actually say out loud after a certain point what you know the commentator is going to say, using that language, and it's just a tribute to how quickly you adapt.
Totally. I mean, it becomes part of your lexicon in your life.
Does.
You know, when this texter said a minute ago, I fall over putting on my underwear. Well, I remember when I was a kid, when I was finally able to do a somersault, I was feeling like I had achieved. When Biles is in the air, can you believe this is a human being doing what this young woman is doing?
So she's doing, it might have been the uneven bars, but it might have been a vault, and she reached a height of 12 feet 9 inches, and they measured her against one of the male gymnasts who, his height, he's renowned for his height, and his was 12.
That's incredible.
It is. The fact and she's so small. Her center of gravity is smaller.
I know.
How she gets up that high is just amazing.
Okay, let's go to Ann in Sudbury. See if you're sharing the joy there, Ann. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for taking the call. Yes, I am sharing the joy. Listening to your earlier caller, Emily, talking about how exciting it is to be her age and to be seeing all of this happiness.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. And given what an awful summer this has been in terms of news, this week is like, this is living in a magic world. We've got the Olympics, and we've got the captives in Russia coming home.
Great point.
And we've got so many exciting things. Watching Simone Biles is like, it's better than watching any fantasy movie. And,
you left out one great thing, by the way, even though we haven't seen it. I can imagine it happening, which is Donald Trump falling over, putting on his underwear. Can you imagine that, Ann?
Oh, you know something? I spend a lot of time talking like that, but not on the radio.
Well, good. Neither do I. That's fine.
Joe Biden singing happy birthday to that 13-year-old
Oh, that kid yesterday.
Was amazing. And just, it's been one beautiful thing.
Well, can I add one thing? Ann, did you see when they met the prisoners that had been released by Putin when Biden took off his American flag pin and put it on Paul Whelan. I mean, talk about beautiful moments.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I think we are.
Ann, thanks. That was great.
Thank you, Ann. And to Ann's point, I think we have been a bit starved for happiness when, sort of divisiveness and who do you hate takes over the national discourse. This does remind people about their capacity for kindness and the capacity of kindness of others, and that's actually something that you want. We may be tolerating some of the other in the short term, but this is really how you want to feel most of the time.
The other bad news that I've had a hard time recovering, I haven't been able to eat liverwurst for 2 weeks, which is another. You don't like liverwurst?
No.
You never squeezed it or
Oh, dear
squoze it
God.
out right into your mouth?
What is wrong with you?
Okay, fine. You should try it before you criticize it. Nancy and JP, you're on Boston Public Radio with Andrew Cabral.
The look of liverwurst.
And me, Jim Browdy. Welcome to the show, Nancy. Hi.
Hey, what's happening? So imagine this. We were 3 black kids, 5, 6, and 7, falling in love with Peggy Fleming. So that tells you
Peggy
how long
Fleming.
ago.
Skater. Go ahead.
Yeah, and what happened was we were trying to mimic her style. It landed my youngest sister in the hospital because she got a splinter all the way up her foot, and she had to stay in the hospital for a couple of days. That didn't end our love for the Olympics. And had Simone Biles been around when we were kids, we would probably fainted. So thank you very much.
Nancy, that was great. Thanks for
Peggy
sharing the
Fleming.
memory.
She's going back a ways with Peggy Fleming.
She was I was right.
Yeah,
Skater, right?
absolutely.
US skater.
But that was many Olympics ago.
We have a couple of perspectives on this. Cheryl in Arlington texts, imagine my joy when, while visiting my elderly conservative mother, I could change the channel from Fox News to the Olympics. That was actually good.
That's very good.
We finally have somebody who's weighing in here. Sorry to be a buzzkill, but I find the Olympics, is anonymous, by the way, boring and a huge waste of money that could be put to better use. I wish sports in general were more targeted to all people moving to their own potential, and wish that schools had more non-competitive intramural programs. I agree with that. I'm not crazy about the Olympics and World Cup as an expenditure thing, but it's happening. And so we can debate another day, as we have many times, including in Boston.
But you can have both. You can have non-competitive intramural programs and other types of non-competitive programs. And you can have, stuff like the Olympics. I don't think it's a binary choice.
Yeah, but I guess I hate to speak for a person who is not here, but I assume that person would say, but the difference is we don't spend money on the latter. We are more than willing to spend money on the big splash.
Yeah.
We're not willing to spend money on the non-big splash because it doesn't accrue to the benefit of the spender. The spender gets glory for
No,
whatever.
The point's well taken.
Okay.
Randy from Scituate, how are you?
Hello, Randy.
Oh, I'm fine, thank you.
You sound surprised, like we called you, Randy.
I've never been on the radio, so...
We're glad to have you. What's up?
One thing...
Yeah.
I just wanted to say something. We used to live in Brazil,
Okay.
and Brazil is the most amazing place in terms of people being affectionate, caring for their neighbor. They are just so innately kind and good. So what you see at the Olympics is not unusual. This is how Brazilians are. It has nothing to do with, or it might have something to do with Gen Z, but it more has to be at the heart of Brazilian culture.
That's great.
Okay.
I don't know Brazilian culture except during soccer time in my neighborhood, but I accept all that you say. Randy, thanks for the call. An anonymous texter says, how can anyone not love Flava Flav funding the women's water polo team? Did you see him and Jill Biden hugging it out the other day?
Oh,
that was pretty good. Is he actually, I mean, he's at every match. Is he funding this thing?
Oh, he's a booster. I think that's financial support, but he's also, he's considered to be their hype person, their hype man.
And what is Snoop Dogg doing here?
I think he's just sort of an American ambassador, an American representative. Because didn't he carry the torch for a period of, for a length of time?
He did?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jamie says yes. I guess it must be true. He's great. But speaking of one of the people I really admire for a variety of reasons, not just his athletic skills, but as a person, see, Steph Curry was there for the Biles thing.
Yeah.
Steph Curry is obviously
actually most of the team was there.
I didn't know
most of
that.
the
Is
U.S.
that true?
The basketball team, it was there.
That's pretty cool.
Kevin Durant was there.
Really?
Yeah, and I think. I mean, Dwayne Wade isn't on the team, but Dwayne Wade's been doing broadcasting. Yeah.
I haven't heard him. There was a big story in the Globe the other day about whether he's ready for the big leagues of broadcasting.
I thought he was great.
Yeah.
But you know who is just tearing the place apart? Michael Phelps' commentary on the swimming is next level. He is fantastic. I mean, not only does he have the intricate sort of knowledge of the sport, but he's a regular guy, and he expresses really difficult stuff in very regular terms. He's fascinating
Great hair,
to
too.
watch.
Did you see the new
Great
hairdo?
hair.
How great is that hair thing?
Great hair.
Molly in West Newbury, you're next on Boylston
Molly.
Public Radio with Andrew Cabral and me, Jim Browdy. Hi.
Hi. Simone Biles is just, as Jim would say, otherworldly.
Yes.
And I was so disappointed when I heard read an article about J.D. Vance complaining a few years ago when she had to take time off to get her
I'm glad you brought this
out, or
up.
whatever the term was.
Yeah.
And it was so disappointing because everyone needs to acknowledge when they need help, and somebody of her caliber to do that I thought was so brave, and such a shallow, small man to call that out. And we should be ashamed of his comments.
You know, I am so, even though we tried not to infuse this with politics, I'm glad you did that. It was sort of like when the prisoner thing happened yesterday. Can't for one night Trump and Vance and the others say, well done.
Right.
I mean, this is
welcome
a great
him. Just
moment
say
for these
home.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or welcome, right. I mean, Molly, I'm really glad you called, even though you ruined the spirit here. Thank you very much for that call. I haven't seen this. Someone I don't know who typed this note from our team. Colin Jost, obviously from the Weekend Update on SNL, and more famous for who he's married to than for what he does. I know it's horrible, whatever. He's NBC's Olympic surfing correspondent. It's horrible, but it is true. I mean, he's more famous. I'm sorry, I don't think he's that funny either. I mean, but do you think he's that funny? Do you think he's that funny?
No, I just like the fact that you took a detour to slam Colin Jost.
No, I'm not slamming him, and it's not his fault. I mean, when he was hosting the White House press correspondence dinner, he referred to his wife like 50 times.
I thought he was pretty good hosting the dinner.
He was all right. She was better. In any case, that's it. That's it.
This was from Jamie talking about,
It was?
that I think, has he gotten injured?
He hurt his foot?
Yeah, and it's
being a
apparently
broadcaster,
very funny.
he hurt his foot?
Yeah.
Well, then let's talk about his wife then instead, okay? We're done. Thank you for your calls.
Somebody has a crush on Scarlett Johansson, but we're not going to say
actually,
who.
No.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Maybe yes.
All right.
Maybe yes.
Is it time to go?
She's talented.
Is it time to go?
Did you ever see the movie Her?
Is it time to go?
She was an operating system.
See,
Did
you have
see
a
that
crush
one?
on her.
Joaquin,
You totally have a
Joaquin
crush
Phoenix. Did you
on
ever
her.
see that movie?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead.
That's all
He's
the
just
time
not that
we've got.
funny.
We can come back later on and talk about Jim's enormous crush on Scarlett Johansson.
No, she's fine.
But we do thank everybody who called or texted. In just a moment, it's time for Live Music Friday, courtesy of the globally renowned Silkwood Ensemble, about to launch into this year's Global Music Workshop. Live Music Friday is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL, and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, are the Olympics delivering entertainment gold? From stunning, gravity-defying images of the surfing competition, to celebrity commentators serving unconventional coverage, to a reenactment of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper drawing scorn and scandalizing religious groups. Plus, we raise a glass to some great news. The legendary music venue Great Scott has a new home. That and more on The Culture Show's Week in Review, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Andrew Lloyd Webber, Liz Cheney, Supreme Court correspondent Nina Totenberg, and news anchor Chris Wallace. bostonspeakers.org. And Heal Veterinary Clinic in Watertown, committed to providing their clients with conversation-focused visits and caring for pets with low-stress animal handling techniques. Heal Vet, a better experience for you and your pet. Heal.vet.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. Andrew Cabral is in for Marjorie. Marjorie returns on Monday. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. You're about to have a huge treat. It's Live Music Friday. This Sunday kicks off the 8th iteration of Silk Road Ensemble's Global Musician Workshop, a chance for performers from all over the world, 28 countries in all, to convene, collaborate, and invent a few new styles of playing in the process. Part of the program involves public performances August 6th through 10th. Go to silkroad.org for more info. We'll get into all the merits in a minute. First, we're going to hear from two players leading the workshops. Mike Block on the cello that he is strapped to his chest. We'll talk about that. And Bala Kuyute on the West African balafon. I hope I got it right. Here they are playing Yuri Dolan, gentlemen. That was Mike Block, Silk Road Ensemble artist and the Global Music Workshop's director, and Bala Kuyute, another Silk Road Ensemble artist and torchbearer of an 800-year legacy of music. We'll talk about it in a minute. Adam Gerchek is Silk Road's education programs manager. He also joins. To get tickets, well, you go to silkroad.org, you get information, tickets, etc. Gentlemen, that was spectacular. Welcome, and it's great to have you all here. Thank you.
While we're getting your headsets on, I'll ask Adam. Adam, give us sort of a quick and dirty primer on the Silk Road Ensemble and the Global Music Workshop and the connection between the two.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me here and all of us. So Silk Road's an arts organization and touring ensemble founded by cellist Yo-Yo Ma and led by artistic director Rhiannon Giddens. And the whole premise of Silk Road is really doing what we're talking about here is cultural diplomacy and bringing together musicians from across the world and being able to perform together. So the ensemble tours, has albums, and also has a variety of education and social impact programs, one of which is the Global Musician Workshop, which we're so excited to host here in Boston, which is our home base at Silk Road. And so we bring together 70 musicians from 28 different countries as part of this week-long festival. It's really something spectacular.
How do the musicians happen? They apply to this thing, right?
Yeah, so we have, faculty artists, Bala Koyate and myself are among them, as well as like incredible musicians from across the world. I think we were just hearing from our Lebanese vocal singer, Abir Name, who is successfully able to get out of Lebanon and is en route to us right now. We also have musicians from India and across America, really kind of representing different styles. So the faculty, we're trying to be intentionally diverse of who can we bring together. But then the participants, the people that apply to join us, they just through sheer numbers, their diversity trumps anything that we could attempt to curate. And so this year we had 218 participants, I think from over 40 countries apply, and we ended up with a cohort of 70 participants from 28 countries that will be arriving this weekend.
Bala, can you tell us what you were playing? That is one of the most beautiful instruments I have ever seen. Tell us about the instrument.
All right. Thank you. The instrument is called balaphone, and my name is Bala. So I have the same name with my instrument.
Got it.
Well, this is my family instrument going back to 13th century. Not the one I'm playing in here, but the history of the instrument. So even today, the very first balaphone ever made, 800 years old, still in my family, just being passed down generation to generation.
Can people still play it, or you don't touch it?
No, people play it once a year.
Once a year?
Yeah, it's been protected by the UNESCO. I guess it's the oldest instrument today in the earth.
Well, part of, and this is also a bit from Mike too, part of the attraction of all of this is the universality of the music. So can you talk a little bit about the connection between that instrument, an 800-year history in your family, and the griot, the storyteller?
So I'm in a griot to start it with. The Kuyate family has the first griot, or the first jelly, and the Mande Empire. Because it just go back to the king, Sundiata Keita. I don't know how many of you here know about that, king and the Mande Empire, Sundiata Keita, which is my great ancestor called Bala Faseke, was the Sundiata man. We're talking about, 1,000 years. So it's only balaphone was playing to the king, okay? So that's why we ended up having this instrument in our family. So the Kuyate family, we are the keeper of the people history, right? I'm talking about it before reading and writing, okay? So I'm a jelly from the 13th century to now. So all we're doing, we recount, not just performing or entertaining people, we recount the family history through the music.
Storytelling and music.
That's right.
And that's also what the musicians from all the different countries are bringing, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell folks about that, because I think it's a draw for me. I don't know if it is for everybody else.
Well, yeah, we're able to create, dare I say, like a utopian environment at GMW, Global Musician Workshop, where all of these musicians from different backgrounds are working together. We're forming a band. Bala is going to have a band that includes, an Indian sitar player and a nyckelharpa from Sweden and American classical violin players. And we're really bringing people it's like we're kind of like the island of misfit toys, right? Where we're all musicians that come from a different place, but we're all looking for something outside of our own, style of origin. And it's because we share the curiosity that GMW is able to help us create a new community. It's not a jazz community. It's not a bluegrass community. It's a community of people interested in blending communities.
Can we talk about one misfit toy? You. I've never, I don't know, if people are here or watching streaming, you're playing the cello. I know you know this.
This is correct. You have a keen eye.
Thank you. Standing up. I don't think the only thing it reminded me of, I know we're not supposed to mention Woody Allen anymore, but I think it was in Take the Money and Run, and one of them when he's in a marching band playing the cello, he sits, plays a few notes, picks up his chair, runs ahead to catch up and plays again. But you're standing. What's up with that?
Yeah, so actually Bala and I share, we're talking about, looking outside of our backgrounds for what else we can experience. So as a cello player, I learned in what I like to call the 20th century style, where I was sitting down, much like Silk Road's original artistic director, Yo-Yo Ma. I've been standing up with a strap that I designed for over a decade now, so I can kind of engage physically in a conversation on stage. And I'm playing on a 3D printed carbon fiber cello. It's by a company, Forte 3D, and even so like basically I'm a complicated person who likes doing new things. And what's cool is, one of the things that brought Bala and I together is the balaphone is traditionally played also sitting on the ground.
That's right.
Bala's not only put his instrument up on a keyboard stand so he can, be physically standing as well, but he's added a second instrument so he can play chromatically along with other Western instruments. And so, we've been playing together now over a decade ourselves, and it's, the people who are looking for new ways of doing things tend to find each other.
Can we stay on the cello for a minute? How does a 3D printed cello sound? I mean, it sounded like a cello.
Well, this is the special design that's possible
I'm
nowadays.
sorry, no, Bala, it's a ridiculous question, but I'm looking at it, and it looks like a 3D printed cello. I mean,
yeah, it looks amazing. Yeah,
it does. But
so you've got an 800-year-old history balaphone with a brand new 3D printed instrument. We can all make music together.
That's beautiful. Speaking of cello, before you ask, I want to say you've both mentioned Yo-Yo Ma. One of the great experiences of my life is Yo-Yo Ma and Andres Nelson's from the BSO were on my television show together. And before the segment started, which was one of the most thrilling segments I've ever been involved in my whole life, just the two of them head-to-head talking music like you are, one of the leaders of this organization, who shall be unnamed, came in to say hello to them and stepped on Yo-Yo's 200-year-old cello. And you could hear a little bit of a crunch, I should say.
Well, if only he had a 3D printed carbon fiber cello by Forte 3D.
That's exactly what made me think of that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Adam, I would think that logistically speaking and organizationally, this is a bit of a challenge. You've got 70 musicians from 28 countries. I think it's every country, every continent anyway, except Antarctica. They're all bringing precious instruments, some of them historical, some of them probably artifacts. How long does it take you just to get the two, like you've got shows in Boston, shows in China. How long did it take you to put that together?
It's no small feat. We say that it's 51 weeks of the year spending time organizing.
There were only 52 weeks. I was going to say.
That's right. So it really is, it's a huge feat. And you've been talking about the Olympics and how it's a respite from the divisiveness of the world. And that's what I feel like Silk Road's doing in its own way of bringing these musicians together and showing how the world could work. And
is there diplomacy involved if you're dealing with someone who's coming from a country that's experiencing fraught times, and they're going to a place that maybe their home country is not particularly fond of?
Well, we see this where we have participants coming from nations that might be warring or have political divisiveness, but making music together on stage, having conversation. The nations that they come from are part of a person's identity, but it's not the only thing that they are. And when everyone's coming together to make music, that's really where you get to see those things are superficial. The borders are things that we've made up, but the things that connect us are still very, very real.
It's a great way to make that point.
Speaking of international connection, though, it's not just musicians coming to you. We mentioned that you're here at the New England Conservatory, August 4th. Is it 4th to 10th or 6th to 10th?
Exactly, yeah.
4th to 10th for concerts.
But you're also in Hangzhou in China. I think you're part of that too, Mike, are you not?
That's right, yeah.
26th to the 31st. How did that come about?
Well, luckily, one of our longtime Silk Road Ensemble members has been a part of the Global Musician Workshop for many years, Wu Man. Wu Man is the master of the Chinese pipa. She's from Hangzhou in China. She lives in America now, and she's on faculty at this beautiful conservatory, Zhejiang Conservatory in Hangzhou. And she just loved what we were doing here in Boston and wanted to find a way to bring it to a Chinese and Eastern Asian audience. And we've had plenty of those participants, joining us here in Boston. But this will be the first year we've created sort of this international chapter for the work we're doing. So just in a couple weeks, we'll be flying to Hangzhou and doing our second GMW, a second Global Musician Workshop this month.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, who writes this music? Because the level of collaboration is just amazing, but who actually puts it together?
Well, that's a great question. So, every faculty member is leading a band of participants. So Bala is going to be leading and teaching original music and traditional music to his bands. Mm-hmm. I'll be doing the same with my bands. And basically everything you see in those concerts, the participants will begin learning Sunday morning. And so it's really like a language immersion.
Sunday morning and playing Monday?
The participants play on Wednesday night. The faculty get a head start. We're gonna rehearse tomorrow for the concert on Tuesday.
That's unbelievable.
But the idea is that we're immersing ourselves in each other's musical languages, and that's what the week is for. It's for this intense time together to create all this music to share.
So, Bala, when Mike was just mentioning your band, as he called it, is that a cross-cultural band too, or is it not? Is it all in music that you're familiar with and used to?
Yeah, pretty much. I guess each faculty have their own identity when it comes to the music. So what I'll be teaching my students is Monday music, but it's all going to learn by ear, no music sheet. Because sometimes that music sheet can take the excitement out of things. So sometimes you got to go through this little bit of challenge. So
it's new to them?
It's new to them. None of them hear this music we're going to play before.
That's
the emotional commitment you have to do this, and how open your heart has to be to learning something new in that short space of time, it just blows me away.
You know, I was a participant in the program actually before I ended up being the organizer, and that whole idea that you just said of that openness is exactly what we see throughout Silk Road and this program. Is you have to just know that you're not going to have the answers in the room, and you just need to listen to the people around you to be able to build something different.
Would you fail out of the program? What happened to you?
I did 1 year and that was enough. No.
What'd you play?
Bass. I play upright bass.
Yeah, and so can you make? I assume we've seen two instruments that are not typical, at least for us, including yours, obviously. Is that I assume that's common with other players as well, or is it not?
Yeah, I mean, what you'll see in our concerts is every band is potentially the first time those particular instruments have ever been combined. And even when I go through the applications for this program, still, we started in 2015, I'm still encountering instruments that I have yet to have seen before. And so the idea of what music can mean to different people is so wide.
So tell us, Adam, what's a program like? One of these nights here at the conservatory, what will people get at a typical program? What will they hear?
Yeah, so each of the concerts features 9 bands, each led by faculty, as Mike and Bala mentioned. And every single group is going to be totally different. You're getting people learning from different traditions that the faculty come from, but as Mike mentioned, you might have a young chin player playing with a hip-hop musician, playing with someone who plays cello. And so each concert's going to be a complete mix of different participants. They're going to be performing, each participant will be performing in 3 out of the 4 concerts, and then we have the faculty concert to kick it off. And they're spending all day in workshops, rehearsals, different types of elective classes to just learn about music from around the world, learn from each other, have conversations, and kind of figure out how can music really serve as a connector.
So, Mike and Bala, we're going to excuse you to go back to your positions in a second. What are you doing? What are you playing for us this time? Bala, what's the second item?
This second piece called Jarabi, which is a Mandinka language, which means we all have someone to love. Either you love what you do, you have someone to love in your life.
It's pretty beautiful,
yeah,
I should say. Gentlemen, you want to go to your wonderful instruments, and we'll talk to Adam. So, Adam, tell us how to get tickets again and what the whole deal is here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can get tickets at silkroad.org/GMW. The concerts are going to be happening August 6th through 10 at New England Conservatory's Jordan Hall. And then we'll also be having a tour with the Silk Road Ensemble coming up in November. So also go check out those tickets.
What does that mean? Where's that happening?
So we're going to be going across several states and cities, starting in Chicago, and that's going to be part of our American Railroad Project, which is a large initiative started by our artistic director, Rhiannon Giddens.
Fabulous. We'll
Thank you for
talk
being
about
here.
Another star. Bala and Mike, take it away. Spectacular.
We've been listening to Mike Block on cello and Bala Kayude from the Silkwood Ensemble. They're leading the Global Musician Workshop, playing with musicians from 28 countries across musical genres. There are shows to catch at New England Conservatory's Jordan Hall, August 6th through the 10th. Go to silkroad.org for more information and to book tickets. Coming up after...
Can I just say one thing before you say what's coming up? They're as great to watch as they are to listen to.
No,
I mean,
absolutely
it is
fantastic.
Beautiful, just beautiful.
Coming up after the new news, the next few generations, we'll talk about how climate change will impact our food systems with food policy analyst Corby Kummer. It's all next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. 3 Americans who were freed in a prisoner swap with Russia have returned to the U.S. They landed at Joint Base Andrews last night and met with President Biden and Vice President Harris. They've now flown to San Antonio, Texas for medical checkups. The trio includes former Marine Paul Whelan and reporter Evan Gershkovich. And NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports the third American is home just in time for her daughter's 13th birthday.
A journalist with the U.S.-funded Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty, Alsu Kormasheva, hadn't been able to speak to her daughters or her husband for 9 months. And in that time, Pavel Butorin says the girls became major advocates for their mother, who faced a secret trial in Russia.
And not only will Alsu find that they have grown taller, but she'll also find 2 young women who are more mature, more resolute about their own rights to free speech and expression. As Americans.
The younger one is 13 today, and President Biden sang happy birthday when he announced the prisoner swap. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
Former President Trump lost another bid to try to lift the gag order that bars him from talking about the prosecution team, court staffers, or their families in his New York trial. As NPR's Jimena Bustillo reports, Trump's legal team tried to use his new 2024 opponent to lift the order.
A New York appeals court decided to keep the gag order in place despite Trump's requests that it should be lifted so he can push back against his new Democratic presidential opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris. His lawyers argued Harris is framing her candidacy as a prosecutor against a convicted felon. But the appeals panel said that the gag order should stay in place until after Trump is sentenced in September, since this case is still ongoing. They also said that, quote, threats received by district attorney staff after the jury verdict continued to pose a significant and imminent threat. In May, a jury convicted Trump of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Earlier this summer, the judge lifted part of the gag order, allowing him to talk about witnesses and jurors. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, New York.
The U.S. added just 114,000 jobs in July, far less than economists were expecting. That's a drop from the 179,000 jobs created in June. Gus Fauché is the chief economist at PNC Financial.
We have seen a slowing in job growth over the course of 2024. I think this is due to the lagged impact of higher interest rates that we've seen in the U.S. economy over the past few years.
The Labor Department says the unemployment rate rose to 4.3%, and it's risen 4 months in a row. Wall Street is sharply lower at this hour. The Dow is down 829 points. That's down 2%. NASDAQ down 398 points. That's 2.3%. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Paul Whelan, a former Marine and brother of Martha's Vineyard artist Elizabeth Whelan, is free and headed home today. Whelan was convicted of espionage and held for more than 5 years in Russia. He was released as part of a prisoner swap with 2 other Americans, as we've been hearing, including Wall Street journalist Evan Gershkovich. Whelan's brother David spoke to ABC News last night about the moment he learned his brother was on his way home.
We had been through 2 prisoner releases before where he had not come home. So despite the growing media announcements and speculation overnight, and even into this morning that an exchange was happening and that Paul was going to be a part of it, I didn't really allow myself to believe that it was going to happen until I saw that announcement by the White House.
Elizabeth Whelan, who's advocated for her brother's release, stood with President Biden at the White House for the announcement of the prisoner release. As part of the state's new $58 billion budget signed this week by Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, Marblehead is in line to get $8.1 million in new investment money for the town. And State Senator Brendan Crichton says the money will be spread to a number of places ranging from Chapter 70 education funding to local aid to one-time earmarks supporting Marblehead's historic heritage and museums. Meanwhile, State Rep Jenny Armini says the brilliance of Massachusetts is that we are able to treasure our past while preparing for the future. Hazy, hot and Henry today, already 90 degrees in Boston. We could see a high of 95. This is GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I have a little bit of a technical difficulty. I am still Jim Browdy, and she is still Andrew Cabal.
I am on occasion. I don't cop to that all the time.
For Marjorie Egan, that's right. That is the most pathetic applause I have ever heard in my life, ever. It's a little bit, can I tell you something? When you have to beg for applause, it doesn't count, but thank you anyway.
Don't let him tell you what to do. If you want to clap, you clap. If you
Marshall Egan. Who the hell is Marshall Egan? Marjorie Egan will be back on Monday.
It's Marjorie's little brother.
Monday she'll be back. The mayor will be with us. I've gotten everything wrong. Let's see if I can do this. The mayor will be here on Tuesday. That'd be Michelle Wu. And there's one more thing. Oh, David Hogg is going to join us in a few minutes, in addition to obviously doing incredible work with March for Our Lives around sensible gun reform. After being a Parkland survivor, he's now formed an organization with a colleague that is attempting to elect young progressives to Congress and state legislatures. I do know who these people are. These are our regular transit panel members, Jim Aloisi and Stacy Thompson. Jim is a former transportation secretary, member of the Transit Matters Board, a contributor to Commonwealth Beacon. Nice to see you, Jim. Stacy is the outgoing executive director. We'll find out what's up with that in a minute, from Livable Streets Alliance. Hello to you two. It's great to see you.
Good to be back. Welcome to both of you. And as you well know, we here on BPR are not known for our circumspection. So we have, since the House gavelled down at 9 o'clock yesterday morning and the Senate gavelled down right behind them at 10 o'clock, we have been expressing our frustration and anger at how sort of singularly unproductive the legislature has become. So we turn to your pet topic. Tell us, what did they accomplish with regard to transit, and what did they not accomplish? And I have a feeling the second one is going to take you a little longer.
Oh, Jim, go ahead. Lower your mic just a quarter bit. That's perfect. That's good. Thank you.
Well, they funded the T through
that was big of them.
The current fiscal year. That's a good thing. They really didn't address the long-term looming issue of the fiscal cliff that we've talked about, but they sort of got the T past the moment. I hate to start this way as sort of...
Go ahead. We love this. Makes us happy.
I mean, other than the lack of productivity, you also there were harbingers, right? So let's talk about the millionaire's tax. Everyone thought that was going to be the thing that saved our transport. Turns out transportation keeps getting less and less of that whole, right? There's no legal requirement.
We should say part of the ballot question was that half of the money raised by the millionaire's tax was supposed to go to transportation, the other half to education, but obviously it has to go through the legislature.
Correct, and there was never any legally binding 50-50 split. And so what we see now is, I think it's like 53-47. It keeps getting wider and wider. It won't evaporate. But my larger point is, it's not the thing that's going to save the day, right? So basically the T got about $133 million out of the budget toward operating, and its usual $188 million toward operating, which is called contract assistance from the state. That's enough to get them by. What we didn't get a lot of things. Stacy can talk about some of those. My message on the T is that this was just get past the moment budget. And we can't afford to do one-offs anymore. And so hopefully during the next period of time, say 6 to 10 months, there can be a consensus around what is the new sustainable approach to funding the MBTA, and particularly funding the MBTA's operating costs.
Well, that was upbeat. How about you, Stacy?
Okay, I'm going to be upbeat.
Oh, good.
I know, surprising. Let's talk about what we did get, which you asked. We did get full funding for the low-income fare program that the MBTA will begin implementing this month. We did get funding to continue fare-free transit on all 15 regional transit authorities across the state, making Massachusetts a continued leader on this issue. There's also a sort of slid in there a mandate for the MBTA to start studying free buses more seriously, which was a nice policy add. And as Jim said, we did get full funding for just like literally keeping the trains running. I think what some of us have been most disappointed about are the other policy initiatives that they just didn't move. I think the one that is most notable for people paying attention is a bill that would allow for camera enforcement of bus lanes. It's something that advocates have been working on for years. Disability rights advocates have named this as a top priority. Bus riders have named it. It passed the Senate, and it didn't pass the House, and it's sort of a no-brainer. There's no real opposition.
I was just going to say.
There's no opposition.
Why would this not pass in an hour after the thing is drafted? Who is against this?
I mean, quite literally, almost no one. And I will give the MBTA credit because the team there did an enormous amount of work to make sure there were data protections, to make sure there were fines and fees protections, to make sure that this bill would really protect citizens against the ways that cameras are used inappropriately.
By the way, we identified one opponent. We forgot. Somebody who drives in the bus lane. That'd be Marjorie, and we forgot about that. I'm sorry.
But can I just ask Stacy? What I couldn't understand is even before the Senate passed the bill to the House, they stripped out the provision that would have installed cameras on public school buses.
Yes.
What was the rationale? I mean, that's where you're constantly hearing stories about a bus driver who maybe attacks a child or a kid attacking another kid. What was the thinking behind stripping that out before it even went to the House?
You know, I don't want to speculate, but I'm going to. There is a school bus bill on the House side. And so I think what we're seeing here is, now in what's known as informal session, the House and the Senate have a few months to sort of go back and forth. The House can say, hey, we want our school bus thing. And the Senate can say, hey, we want our MBTA bus thing. And they can trade back and forth. But for people who depend children, for disabled folks who literally can't get on the bus because a car is blocking the bus stop, this is not a political game for them. This is their livelihoods. This is their actual lives. So, the frustration is palpable and justified around this.
Can I say, I want to make an observation that I want to pick up on something Stacy talked about, which is the means testing of fares for the T. The observation is...
Which was funded.
Which was funded, but I want to say a word about it. First, the observation. It's like, why are we surprised that once again we're talking about 4 a.m., and then reading in the paper comments by leadership on both sides that was
arrogant.
Well, wait, let's stop right there. The Speaker of the House is asked about this last-minute crap that they do. And even if they do things, as we said yesterday on the show, it means that 95% of the people you elected have no idea what they're voting on. They just vote for it because the leader told them to. And when the Speaker of the House, Mariano, was asked about this process, is it efficient? His response, quote, was, why shouldn't it be? And I guess the answer is why it shouldn't be is because they didn't pass the climate bill, the economic development bill, adequately fund the T, on an oversight of for-profit hospitals, et cetera. So go ahead.
So anyway, I just observed, it's
ridiculous.
We can't get accustomed to this. And somehow, from a citizen perspective, it's just not healthy. And whether that's correctable at the ballot box by way of referendum or initiative, or whether it's correctable in another way, we really need to think about whether our future in the 21st century is served by the kind of legislative approach that we're getting. On means-tested fares, I just am compelled to point out the legislature has thankfully and wisely said that everybody boarding a bus in every regional transit authority in the Commonwealth does so for free. We have free bus throughout the Commonwealth, except if you're poor and live in Chelsea, or if you're poor and you live in East Boston.
Great point.
You pay.
That's a great
And
point.
even if you pay means-tested, what I want to know is, why is it that poor people in East Boston and Chelsea and Everett and Revere, and let's keep going on, are they lesser citizens?
What would their answer be if they were here now and you asked them that question? What would the answer be?
I'm afraid the answer would be, it's less expensive. We think it's too expensive. And that's a bad answer, because it's not.
Yeah.
It's not, number one. And number two, if we're really going to talk about transportation justice, we can't treat everyone who boards a T-bus, on my judgment, differently than we treat anyone who boards a bus in Worcester or Haverhill or anywhere else in the Commonwealth.
Can I ask you about the funding thing that Jim mentioned a minute ago, Stacey? Is Healy appointed this commission that is theoretically going to report at the end of the year on funding mechanisms, even though it was disappointing when she basically sort of bit off the head of her transportation secretary when she had the audacity to say maybe we should put a toll on the northern border. And by the way, when Healy, the governor, was here and Marjorie asked her about that, she said, no, everything's on the table, including that too. I mean, to get the full picture. So if the legislative leaders were here and we said, yet again, you kicked the can down the road, would their answer be, we're just waiting for this report, and when the report comes, we're going to go into full throttle funding mode, or what would they say?
Yeah, I mean, we're playing a game of not it right now, where they're all looking at each other and pointing. For the younger folks in the crowd, the Spider-Man meme, where they're all, right? 3 people know this reference. I'm
an older person in the crowd, and I don't know the reference, so go ahead.
But, it's a lot of not it, we're not going to be the ones to lead. I think what I'm a little bit concerned about is that the work of this task force, which I will remind you, does not have any transportation experts on it. So folks like Jim Aloisi, folks like myself, but others, there aren't transportation experts on this appointed commission. Their job is not to produce a bill. Their job is to provide a menu of options. And so that hard work we should be doing right now to figure out what a package will look like so that we're ready to go in January, no one, not the legislature, not the governor, is taking responsible for that critical step that needs to start right now.
By the way, I wrote a 3-part series in Commonwealth Beacon a few months ago.
Believe it or not, I actually read it.
The toolkit is there, and and that's free. I did that no charge. So my point being, it's not rocket science, folks, right? We can tell by what others have done how to navigate the path forward. So the real question, there's 2 things going on. There's an immediate crisis at the T that's going to hit by next June, right? That's a $700 million gap that no one has a solution for. That's urgent. There's something less urgent, which is as we continue to transition toward electric, the gas tax will be reducing, eventually going away. What's the long-term solution to filling $800 million a year that we collect from the gas tax, right? That will go away when we're all driving electric. That's taking longer than people expected. And so that's not as urgent, but those are the dual things that the legislature needs to grapple with. Whether the task force is going to provide them with guidance on the short-term urgent need of the T, as opposed to this longer-term, take our time, is a question that I'd like to see the answer.
Can return to what you said before that we shouldn't let pass. There are no transportation experts on the panel?
So the types of folks you have on Jim, me, Transportation for Massachusetts, Walk Massachusetts, Transit Matters, those groups are not included.
Why?
That is a question for the governor. That is not a question for me. These were her decisions. There are lots of business folks. There are other, great voices on the commission, but, I would like to see folks who are really actually in the weeds, like Jared at Transit Matters or Reggie at T4MA, getting in the weeds on these issues. It's their full-time job.
Isn't it sort of like having you on the women's gymnastic team in Paris?
You don't want to see that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So, but here, there was your publication. Well, it's not yours, but you can Commonwealth Beacon, which is spectacular. The people should subscribe to. 2 competing headlines. This Phil Lang, the head of the T, has been kind enough to join us a couple of times. I'm sure we'll again answer everybody's questions. Quote, it's becoming more reliable. That's good news. I think a day later, a day before, Tom McGee, former mayor of Lynn, former state legislator, he's now on the board of the T, saying we're barely treading water. Those are not terribly consistent things. Who's right?
Well, McGee's right, and because we are barely treading water.
Is that just about money, or is that what is he talking about?
Well, I think it's about money, but it's about money, and it's because it's about the operating budget. It's about capacity, the ability of the T to have professional capacity to execute things in a sort of high-level professional way. You can't attract and hire the numbers of professionals to execute the work if you don't have the budget to do it, right? So there's a link between what the T's operating budget is and how well funded it is with what is its professional capacity to execute the work.
What do you think about the job that, even given the challenges that Phil Ing is doing He strikes me as very methodical in his approach. He seems to try to knock problems down one at a time. But, sort of to Jim's point, there is this good news about the slow zones sort of slowly going away with an eye toward the future and getting everything up to the right, the maximum capacity, actually, for the speed limit. But then you say there's a $700 million funding gap. So what is Phil-Eng actually going to be able to do? So starting with you, Stacey, and then you, Jim.
Yeah, so this is where I think there's a difference between what the technical challenges are and what the political challenges are. So what we have in Phil-Eng is someone who, when given the resources, is perfectly capable of getting the job done. And what I have said over and over again about the T is that the one thing that should give us hope is that none of their problems are unsolvable. They're actually mostly pretty straightforward if you have the resources to do them. Phil-Eng has demonstrated that that's true. He has the resources, and look at what's happening with the slow zones in particular. The issue around money is political, and I would argue that it is not Phil-Eng's job to convince the legislature to do their job. The issue around money is something that we need to see the governor stepping up, of course, working with the general manager, but it shouldn't also be his job to find $700 million, right? We elect people for that.
And we've pretty much learned that Phil-Eng is not a policy person. He doesn't make policy. He doesn't set policy. He doesn't even want to have conversations about it. He wants to run the railroad, so to speak. I personally think there's a price being paid, and that will continue to be paid, for the approach that the T is taking to slow zones, that these total lengthy shutdowns are suppressing ridership. If you look at ridership across the country, only 2 systems in the country, big city systems, are still at 63%. And that's us in
pre-pandemic.
Chicago. Pre-pandemic, and that's us in Chicago.
Really?
San Francisco's closer to 80%. Washington, D.C. is closer to 80%. New York is higher than that. So what we're experiencing, in my judgment, in terms of our plateauing of ridership here, is less about pandemic effects right now and more about suppression effects due to the fact that people feel like these long-term, lengthy, full shutdowns just don't serve their needs. Now, we can argue about whether it's the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it. There is a price to be paid for the way it's being done.
By the way, one thing I hope you're going to agree that good that happened, I think cost $1 billion, is contactless paying of. Well, you're not crazy about that either. Okay. Well, let's. So before you tell me why I shouldn't be excited about that, the slow zone elimination. It seems that Eng is on track, so to speak. To meet, that was not intentional and it wasn't that interesting. To meet his end of year goal, where whatever. Okay. So the thing that I was talking to Andrea about this morning that upset me, that I'm sure you'll disabuse me of, is they talked about the orange line. The speed will go from 14.2 with the slow zones to 15.7 without them. That's 1+ mile per hour additional speed. I should be excited about that.
You should be excited.
Why?
So as someone who rides the T on a near daily basis, I think what is being lost is that this is, I would call it like there's like a Swiss cheese situation going on, where there are some spots where the T is really slow and some spots where the T is really fast. When all of this is done, the cumulative time saved is going to be several minutes per ride for an average rider, right?
Okay.
So, it's about telling the right story, right?
Okay.
So in one section, 1 mile doesn't seem like that much. For me, yeah, earning 5 minutes when I'm going downtown matters.
You agree with that?
Why is the green line still, no matter what happens in the rest of the T, the green line has been slow since I was at BC, and that was like in the early 80s.
I mean, why is the green line slow? It's a combination of conditions of the track. It's a combination of conditions of the equipment. It's a combination of how they're dispatched.
Okay, we don't want to hear it anymore. Because, by the way, if Marjorie was here, I feel, because we have to pay tribute to Marjorie.
But he did want to talk about slow zones, though, didn't you?
Oh, do you?
No. I mean, I think my point is, I think he certainly Phil-Eng is achieving his self-announced metric. How they're doing it, and by the way, everything the T does in this arena, we should never forget. The T continues to be under an FTA safety receivership.
Right.
That has not been lifted. And so everything they do in this context is colored by that fact.
Okay.
Did you want to talk about $1 billion?
No, so it's too, I don't want to talk about it. It's just too much money for that. Is that what you're both saying for the contactless thing? Quickly, because I want to get to bikes.
I don't know that it's cost benefit. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, so bike lanes. I didn't know that the goal of the city, I hope I get this right, is that half the residents by X, you'll tell me what X is, would be within a 3-minute walk to a safe cycle track, a bike lane,
Yes.
kinda, a segregated bike lane kind of thing.
This is actually a goal that was set by Mayor Walsh in 2015,
Wow.
2016. So, it's always fascinating when people get upset about things like the bike lanes on Boylston Street or this goal, because they were set during the Walsh administration, and Mayor Wu is completing the work that administration
We getting
started.
there?
We are getting there. We're getting closer. I think every summer, as we see, there are more people biking, and every year, as a recent Globe piece showed, that exponential number, that overall number is getting larger and larger and larger, especially where protected bike facilities go in. That means that, of course, people who are not used to seeing cyclists see more of them and encounter them more. We have conflicts. There are certainly public figures who are spreading false information.
Like who?
I've seen Ed Flynn, who I've worked with on pedestrian issues wonderfully, but there's been this push or this false narrative that bike lanes are bad for EMS services. I just reviewed a public statement from Boston EMS that said, these bike lanes do not impede us. They actually work with the transportation department to make sure the designs are correct. And the number one issue that's stopping them is double parking. And so if you care about emergency response, you got to let the ambulances get to the curb,
And
right?
is the ridership going up at an appropriate level as more miles are available to ride? Stacy, Jim, yes or no?
I think so. Also, frankly, many people are mode shifting from transit to cycling when they can. If you look at what's happened in I'm not saying that we're going to be Paris overnight, for sure, but if you look at what's happened in places like Paris, where they've really put a focus on reducing automobility in the inner core with having safe, protected cycling lanes, it's providing more people with more and better access. It's zero emissions, not just carbon, but particulate matter emissions, which is a real threat to our public health. So the idea that the mayor is encouraging this sort of easy walk to a safe cycling lane is another way to say we're providing more people with better access that's highly sustainable. It should be the way we think about inner core communities in the future.
I'm all for bike lanes. I mean, I am the typical driver that, sort of goes, oh, when I'm driving. But in theory, anyway, and mostly in practice, I'm all for bike lanes. Where I see problems is between the bike lanes and now these new bus lanes. Because you drive into an area that you've been familiar with for years, and now you really don't know where you can drive because you don't want to get in the bike lane, and there's a bus-only lane, but you have to take that right, which means crossing over the bus-only lane. It's so who's putting all of this together, and what are they thinking about? You do have to think about cars and pedestrians, and some of this is really confusing.
Well, so I would say, yes, as someone who drives and takes transit and who bikes, I would say even I get confused in all of those different conditions. There are two things here. One, Boston is using nationally acknowledged best practices and federal guidelines to build this infrastructure. So they're not making it up on the fly. They're using...
That's good to know.
They're using best in the country. So when people say they're unsafe or this is bad, it's like, actually the federal government has vetted, what they're doing, and they actually can't put unsafe stuff on the ground. But separately, that doesn't mean that extra signage wouldn't help when they change the way that a roadway is structured. That it wouldn't be helpful to change drivers' education for new people to understand how to operate around people on bikes and on buses. There's a lot we can do to make it better.
But I got a text from a friend right after you were on last time, the two of you, who was upset with me because you and I often fight over the bike stuff. You, Stacy, and I, that I didn't follow up when you said, I think Marjorie asked you, did you bike here today? Yes, I did, to our other studio. Mm-hmm. And you said something like, I was almost hit twice today on the way here. So what kind of message does that send to people like you who are big advocates that you're taking your life in your hands? Not your fault, but ours.
Because I know as an advocate that the most dangerous thing that I do every day is walk across the street. So what I can tell you right now that in the city of Boston, to date, nearly 1,000 people have been in serious or fatal crashes. Not a single cyclist has died yet this year. We're going to hope that number stays zero. But we've had 6 pedestrians die. So I know the statistics, and I know that I do the best that I can to keep myself safe biking, and I'm leaving here today to help a friend get through a bike lane on in Dorchester because I want to teach her to be safe too. But yeah, until we have safe bike infrastructure, others aren't going to follow me.
Why are you quitting?
I am, I like to believe that Joe Biden followed me. No, I've been at Livable Streets for 10 years, and I don't have any special job lined up. It's just there's a great new generation of advocates standing behind me, and I need to get out of the way. So.
This is not the truth, right?
No,
is this
it is.
the truth?
We have the 3 women that are taking over at my organization are amazing.
Okay, great.
But I've been doing this for 10 years, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to go away. I might still.
What are you doing?
For now, I'm going to take a nap in October.
Good for you.
Maybe.
Is that the truth too, or no?
Yeah, no.
Why do you think everybody's lying to you?
Because she's a pretty important voice in this whole thing.
I don't think we're going to miss Stacey's voice.
I'm not going away. I'm not going to stop talking about transportation.
Okay.
But Livable Streets will not be where I'm fully employed.
Do you want to say anything nice about her brilliant leadership for a decade?
No, I do. It's important for me to recognize Stacey and her leadership. All of the stuff that we talk about matters only if people, our advocates, have a voice and are able to affect change. Stacey's done that in many, many ways. And so I think we're all grateful to her for what she's done to date, and we're all looking forward to being supportive of whatever new role she's got.
Are you coming back one more time, or is this it?
If you'll have me.
Well, good. Okay, so we'll do something for you the last time. It's great to see you both.
And he can ask you if you're lying to him.
I didn't say, are you lying? I said, is it the truth? I didn't say, are you lying?
I regret
Thank you, guys.
that David Hogg is not here personally. So
He's on Zoom.
I'd love to shake his hand and tell him what he's doing God's work.
Well, I think he's listening,
Good.
so I hope he hears, and he is.
Yeah.
We will reiterate that.
Thank you. Good to see you, Jim and Stacey.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
We've been speaking with our monthly transit panelists, Jim Aloisi and Stacey Thompson. Jim is the former Transportation Secretary, a member of the Transit Matters Board, and a contributor to Commonwealth Beacon. Stacey is the outgoing and not lying Executive Director of Livable Streets Alliance. Thank you both for being here. After a quick break, gun reform activist David Hogg joins us to talk about how he and his Gen Z cohorts are flexing their political muscle, and what major wins for Democrats in November could mean for the long push for gun reform. He's next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL, and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
Before she was vice president or a senator or in any public office, Kamala Harris came to Washington to study at Howard, a historically black university.
We actually dressed up to go to school. Kamala carried a briefcase, and that was not deemed to be an odd thing.
All this week, we hear from people who knew the vice president before she got to Capitol Hill on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Adventure Park at Heritage Museums and Gardens. Zip line and climbing trails for all ages, 7 days a week this summer, rain or shine. More at myadventurepark.com. And Chevalier Theatre. Rumors of Fleetwood Mac, a tribute to Fleetwood Mac, returns to the Chevalier Theatre in Medford Square on Sunday, August 11th at 8. Tickets and information are available at chevaliertheatre.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. Marjorie's off. She is back on Monday. Andrea Cabral, the former Secretary of Public Safety for the Commonwealth, is sitting in today. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Earlier this week, the Kamala Harris campaign got a nearly $4 million bump thanks to a group of self-proclaimed white dudes convening over Zoom. Well, one of those white dudes was 24-year-old David Hogg, longtime champion of sensible gun reform in America, of course, survivor of the Parkland High School shooting. The organization he co-founded, March for Our Lives, just made their first ever presidential endorsement last week. His latest venture, Leaders We Deserve, is a grassroots organization dedicated to electing young progressives both to Congress and state legislatures all across the country. David, good to see you again. Welcome.
Good to see you all. Thank you for having me. I gotta say,
David. Yeah.
Just on the comments that were happening earlier about the Boston Transit, I just had to say, we got to do something about the red line. It is so slow between Central and Harvard Square. It drives me crazy every time I'm there.
By the way, this is a recent Harvard grad. We should say, if you didn't know, his Boston connection. He just spent 4 years here. We'll see what we can do. We'll get back to you, David, okay?
And
Sounds
David,
good.
Jim Aloisi, who was one of our panelists, as you know, just wanted us to pass on his appreciation for all of the work you do. He was sorry that he couldn't see you in person and shake your hand.
So if he really appreciates it, just fix the damn red line is what he should do, you know? Okay, go ahead.
So, David, catch us up on Leaders We Deserve. It's been around for, a little bit now. You're more than up and running. Tell us what's happening, and just for people who don't know, just give us a little intro on why you started it, why you founded it, and what its purpose is.
Yeah, I mean, the origin of Leaders We Deserve obviously goes back to Parkland, when I got started in political advocacy. After the Parkland shooting, my classmates and I were told by many older people that change wasn't going to be possible in Florida, that we couldn't change gun laws. But we still had the audacity to hope and try. And we actually did. We raised the age to buy guns to 21, and we passed a red flag law that can disarm people that are risk themselves or others. A law that has been used to save, thousands of lives across Florida. It's been used over 12,000 times since the shooting in that state. And, I saw that again. When I was in college, I was working on Congressman Maxwell Frost's campaign. I actually hired Maxwell from my dorm room at Harvard as a freshman to lead March for Our Lives. And he originally didn't want to take the job, but I convinced him to do it after calling him back. And when I was helping him run for Congress, we saw a lot of challenges. We saw people who told me again, I even had some professors that said, he's a great person, but he just doesn't have a chance. He doesn't come from a lot of wealth. He doesn't have great political connections or anything like that. And I said, I've seen those odds before, and I'll take them because we've won before and we're going to do it again. And Maxwell, I helped him raise about $400,000 in his first 2 quarters. But the fact that he needed to raise that much is crazy, right? It's such a big barrier to entry for young people in politics to get elected. But nonetheless, Maxwell got elected by 10 points, defeated 2 former members of Congress, and became the youngest member of Congress. If we didn't have that hope, nothing would have changed. If we didn't have the audacity to hope, nothing would have changed. And I can tell you from my years of doing this work, the biggest obstacle to creating change rarely is whether or not it's actually possible. More than anything, it's if people believe it's possible. So what I've done with Leaders We Deserve is tried to create an organization that helps heavily invest in young people young Democrats running for state legislature and Congress, where we help really heavily invest in them and advise them on a day-to-day basis. Because we saw that is one of the biggest challenges that they have. So just recently in Houston, Texas, we had another win where we spent $300,000 supporting a young woman named Molly Cook, who's an abortion rights advocate, an ER nurse, and gun safety advocate. And she ended up winning in that race. I went and knocked doors for her too, all over Houston in the steamy summer down there. And she won by just 62 votes, becoming the youngest member of the Texas State Senate and one of the most progressive people that's there. And that's really what we're doing with Leaders We Deserve. We have a couple other wins around the country I'd love to tell you more about, but we're here to help provide a answer to what I perceive to be the biggest threat to American democracy, which is not Donald Trump, actually. It's the hopelessness and apathy that helps to empower people to believe that nothing is ever going to change. That becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if we don't believe change is possible, it never will. And what we're doing at Leaders We Deserve is trying to find a couple dozen of the most compelling and incredible generational leaders in the country right now and help supercharge their campaigns to get them across the finish line. For example, President Biden, he's not very young anymore, but he was 29 when he was first elected. And I think one of the reasons he became so successful is because he started when he was so young.
We're talking to David Hogg. By the way, if you want to check out the organization, it's leaderswedeserve.com. David Hogg, how do you pick candidates and how do you pick and target seats?
Yeah, I mean, we have 2 types of races that we target. We look at open blue seats, just because it's cheaper to get people elected there, as you can imagine, when it's not a competitive race where it's a safer Democratic seat and the Democrat that was formerly there isn't running again. And then we also work in very competitive races. So, for example, we're working in a race in Pennsylvania, which is for Anna Thomas, the only person who lost their seat last election cycle in that state legislature. That was in a seat where President Biden won that seat in 2020, but actually the Republicans still won in 2022 in that seat. And she's running again. And last time she lost by about 800 votes, and she's doing everything she can to help turn that around. So that's part of the races that we're looking at. And the way that we look at people who are running for office, most importantly, we ask them, of course, about the issues of gun safety, abortion rights, and climate. But we also ask them, why? Why are you running for office? Right? We aren't here just to elect people because they're young. We want to elect generational leaders that know the power to create good when people in power actually do the right thing. Because oftentimes they come from places where they've seen what happens when that doesn't happen. We have a candidate named Billy Cook in Arkansas that we just recently decided to endorse, and he is running to help reform the rental system in Arkansas, because it's one of the few states where you can still apparently press criminal charges against somebody, against a tenant. And it's one of the only states where that's still the case, and it destroys people's lives. And Billy has been working to help advocate for renters' rights around that state. So that's kind of how we look at it. And we look at, they have an extensive questionnaire and interview process that they go through as well before we endorse them. And the thing about us is that we're not here to endorse several hundred people. We aren't here to try to take credit for everybody. We want to have a couple dozen incredible leaders that we go all in on and really fully support.
We're talking to David Hogg, noted red line reformer and head of one of the heads of Leaders We Deserve.
Both the concept and what drives you are brilliant, because you literally found a place where nothing existed like this. So when you're approaching, given the import of money, and you said that's one of the biggest things that sort of holds people back, how do you decide between races how much of an investment you'll make, and alternatively, how do you keep raising the money you need to keep making those investments?
So that's one of the things that I'm really proud of. This day last year, it was about a week before we launched Leaders We Deserve, we had no money at all. Kevin, my co-founder, and I, Kevin was Maxwell Frost's campaign manager. Maxwell's now the first Gen Z member of Congress. We were riding bikes around DC because we were just living on our own savings before we started this organization. And the way that we got it funded was, over the past year, we've had over 103,000 individual people give us $5, $10, $15, $20. And what's really special about that to me is I'm very passionate about people not taking corporate money, politicians not taking corporate money. And our candidates, they pledge not to take that money either directly themselves or to any leadership PACs, for example. And what's really amazing is that we also don't take that money. And the reason for that is because when we were in Houston, Texas, for example, in that most recent race for Molly Cook, I went and knocked on what was supposed to be the door of a 60-year-old woman named Lisa. But the person who opened up the door was named Kai. He was 20 years old. He had his gaming headphones on. It was a Sunday morning, and he was shirtless, actually. And he was like, "What's up?" And I explained what's going on with the election. I explained that Molly's an incredible candidate, a staunch abortion rights advocate, gun safety advocate, everything she stands for. And he's like, "That's great. She sounds awesome, but what corporations are funding her?" And I got to say none are, because she's a Leaders We Deserve endorsed candidate, and we don't take corporate money. And I got to see his face shift from one of distrust and suspicion to one of excitement. And he said, "I've never voted in a state election like this before, but I'm going to now." And I said, "Well, is there anything else you care about?" And he said he cared a lot about property taxes. And I said, "Well, give me your phone number. I'll put you in touch with the campaign, and you will get a call in the next 15 minutes. So make sure your gaming headphones are taken off." And he got that call, and I asked him, the day after the election, "Hey, did you get a chance to go out and vote?" And he said, "Yes, I did." I said, "Well, thank you, because you were Molly's 62nd vote in that election." And what Kai doesn't realize is that he and people like him have the most political power of anybody in the country, right? If they got engaged, we could change everything for the better. But what scares me is the people who believe that it never can get better. And I understand that cynicism because it feels so hopeless sometimes, right? But with Kai and people like him, what we're trying to do at Leaders We Deserve is provide just a couple dozen incredible examples of generational leaders. Not just people because they're younger that we're supporting, but people that we're supporting because they're incredible leaders that also happen to be young at the same time. And what keeps me up at night, more than anything, is the people I've met like Kai who frankly feel like it seems like they just want one person to come along and fix everything for them. And what's scary about that is that person, if you want to get 100% of what you want in politics, you can't have democracy because you need 100% of the power. And what we're trying to do here is help fight that hopelessness and apathy by giving these young people incredible generational leaders to look up to so they know, yes, the political system's broken, but not all hope is lost. And maybe one day we'll fix the red line.
We're talking to David Hogg, and sadly, the way we met you obviously was around gun violence, and you mentioned it's one of the issues that you interview potential candidates for leaders we deserve about. You had some involvement in the Surgeon General finally issuing an advisory recently on gun violence. I think most people remember the first one that I think really mattered was, I think, in the 60s when the Surgeon General issued, I think it was more than an advisory, I believe a report on cigarette smoking and its dangers. Do things like a gun violence advisory matter in the grand scheme of things, David Hogg?
I think it's important. I think it's certainly important. Ultimately, this is a public health issue, right? It gets cast as a political one, but it is a public health one. And I think we need to address the fact that, obviously what happened in Parkland is terrible, but what happens every day in America, especially in Black and brown communities that are the most impacted by gun violence, but do not get anywhere near the same attention, is awful. And we need to do everything we can to address that. Not just address how does somebody get a gun, like addressing gun laws, but we need to address why does somebody want to pick up a gun in the first place, right? That means addressing systemic poverty. That means addressing the redlining. That is one of the biggest predictors of where shootings occur in the United States. And that means addressing our mental health crisis, but not in a way that stigmatizes mental health more. I just want to clarify, before, in the past, I've heard people talk about the El Paso shooter or the Buffalo shooter that we saw previously a few years ago, both of whom were self-declared white supremacists, go out there and kill people because of the color of their skin or their nationality. And hatred is not a mental illness. Let's make that fundamentally clear. Racism and xenophobia are not mental illnesses. But we still need to talk about mental health and the fact that nearly two-thirds on average of gun deaths in the United States are suicides that happen. We have a lot of work we need to do there and not leave anybody out of this conversation, because those deaths, they are preventable, and I'm really glad to see the Surgeon General do this reporting. But we got a whole lot more work to do. And ideally, in my situation, people always ask me a lot of the time, what would you do, if you had like a magic wand and you could get one policy done at the federal level? The answer to me, federalize Massachusetts state gun laws. The laws aren't perfect by any means, but we know if every state had the same gun laws as Massachusetts and a correspondingly low gun death rate, we would be able to cut gun deaths by over 50%. In the United States, if every state had the same gun death rate as Massachusetts. That's still a lot more work to do, but that's a lot better than where we are right now.
David, I was when I first read about Project 2025, which was actually quite a while ago, I was very worried that knowledge of it wouldn't catch on, that it would fly under the radar somehow, and that people wouldn't be able to see the Heritage Foundation's, fingerprints all over this, and what happened with the federal judiciary would be exactly what would ultimately happen in government if Republicans took the White House again. There isn't an aspect of Project 2025 that doesn't regress in some way some part of democracy. Can you tell people specifically with regard to guns what Project 2025 wants to do?
Well, I think a lot of it's a huge document for one, so I don't think we have the time to analyze all of it. But I think in general, the part that strikes me the most is wanting to gut so many career civil servants from the federal government. And that really concerns me, right? Because we want people in government because of the merit. We don't want them there because of how much they praise the president, right? And that's the part that concerns me the most, that I've really seen about it. There's so many different parts of it as well, but I think that's the one that really comes to mind first, because we need people there that are career experienced civil servants that get there on merit and know how to do their job regardless of whether or not it's a Republican or Democratic president. And the precedent that this would set of gutting so many of those plays could be potentially disastrous. I know government gets a lot of flack, understandably. It's far from perfect, but it's important to note that when we have a bad company, when a company is underperforming, you don't just say the company sucks in general. You look at the staff, you look at the CEO, most importantly, right? And you don't hire people that say this company sucks and then get hired, prove the company sucks, and then continue to get rehired over and over and over again every 2 years, right? And I think that's what's really striking to me is bad government is not a consequence of government itself. It is a consequence of bad leadership. Government can do great things. This is the same government that helped to defeat the Nazis in World War II and Imperial Japan. It's the same government that helped to pioneer the COVID vaccine after one of the worst pandemics since the Spanish flu. And it's the same government that helped us avoid a disastrous economic situation that otherwise would have happened if we did not have it to step in and help people in the wake of COVID.
You know, David Hogg, who I think I want to be when I grow up, I should say, your agenda is really inspirational. I mean, whether it's electing young progressives who are not cynical, you talked about the wonderful laws, comparatively speaking, we have here spreading across the country, and your buddy and colleague, John Rosenthal, has done from Stop Handgun Violence, just done wonderful work here and across the country, but particularly here, we just expanded our laws on ghost guns and red flag laws. But here's the cynical side of me. We spread Massachusetts gun laws all over the country. Leaders We Deserve elects lots of young, progressive, inspired leaders, and we still have an anti-majoritarian, corrupt, lifetime appointment, pro-gun Supreme Court. What do we do about that, David Hogg?
We outlive them. And that's what we're trying to do with Leaders We Deserve, right? What I saw when I was in college and I was studying, a lot of what I was studying was the history of movements in the 20th century in the United States, and especially the conservative movement. And when I looked at that, what I realized, in my view, is that liberals tend to be very emotional investors. We effectively try to time the market. We wait for a really charismatic, inspiring person to come along, and we lose our minds and we lose sight of our wallets, and all of a sudden we're like throwing, way more money than we ever imagined at, a very charismatic person. And that's awesome, right? There's so many incredible examples of great leaders out there, but the reality is we are not going to change this in one election. And I think liberals are finally coming around to realizing that, but conservatives have known that for the past 40 years. Whereas, we're trying to time the market, they're investing with time in the market. They're investing every single year at every single level of government. And what I looked at when I started Leaders We Deserve with Maxwell Frost's campaign manager, Kevin Latta, was what is our comparative advantage here, right? We don't have a ton of money like the Koch brothers or these other people do. What do we have, though, that they can't buy more of? And the first thing that came to my mind is time, right? We are investing in building the future of our country here with Leaders We Deserve, with generational leaders. If you look back in American history at the best presidents that we've ever had, you think of Lincoln. He was 25 when he was first elected to the Illinois State House. You think of FDR, he was 28 when he was first elected to the New York State Senate. You think of LBJ, who was 28 when he was first elected to Congress. And you think of Biden, obviously it's maybe shocking for some younger listeners out there, who was 29 when he was first elected, right? And all of those people together got so much done. And it makes sense. If you start when you're young, you become very effective at getting things done because you have experience. You have the relationships, you know how to play the game. I'm not saying that we need a president that's 35 by any means. I think that may actually be a disaster. We need somebody with experience in that position. But the single best thing we can do for our government and for the progressive movement in general is invest in the future of our party and help build these incredible young leaders now in critical states like Georgia, where Leaders We Deserve is doing a ton of work to help invest in incredible candidates. In fact, one of our candidates is running against a fake elector in Georgia, one of Trump's fake electors. It's a crazy story. Where we're investing the time in that market. And ultimately, we have that time on our side. And that's why I really believe in what we're doing, even if we don't have hundreds of millions of dollars. Although if anybody wants to help change that, they can go to leaderswedeserve.com. But we're investing the time there to help turn out young people in this election and help protect the future of American democracy by giving these young people and older people the thing that we need most to help protect it, which is the belief that things can get better and change actually is possible. That's what we're doing at Leaders We Deserve, is building those generational leaders.
But in the short term, you will continue to help building our numbers to get a majority in the House and the Senate and Congress so that we can expand the court and overturn Citizens United and all of the rest of those bad decisions. Great. That's terrific. So tell us about, I really did get a very big kick out of this, mostly because of the folks that you had sort of on the call and the vibe and the humor on the call. But tell us about this White Dudes for Harris and it went far beyond what I thought it was going to be able to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, me too. When I first heard about it, and I got an email about it, I was a little suspicious of something called white dudes for anything. But I think for too long we've kind of just standed on the sidelines and not done our part to help stand up and be an ally to Vice President Harris. And we want to make sure that when there are these gatherings of people like we saw in Charlottesville, that people know that they don't speak for me. They don't speak for any of the people on that call. And we are here to support an incredibly well-experienced and versed candidate for the president of the United States, like Vice President Kamala Harris. But I also have to acknowledge, too, this wasn't even our idea. This started and was made possible because of the first call for Kamala Harris, which was Black women for Kamala, which was an incredible event. And we were just following in the footsteps of that and doing everything that we can to help support her. And we know that one of the things that the campaign needed help most with was that fundraising. As the vice president is in the middle of vetting all these people for vice president, personally, I love Tim Walz, and I would love for him to be the vice president, but I'll still support her no matter what. We wanted to help raise money, to help get her fund the campaign in these last 96 days and do everything we could to support her. And that's really what it was. I will say, though, when I was on that call, the thing that struck me most was when the original dude, Jeff Bridges, from Lebowski, was on the call. My jaw hit the floor. It was incredible. But at the end of the day, too, what was notable on that call, too, was I was the youngest person on there. I think I was one of the only people, if not the only person on there that was under 30, from what I remember. And it's not anything against them. It's to say, we got to do a better job as a party of including the future of our party and making sure that they are properly represented on there. And not just when they're raising a ton of money. When Vice President Harris announced that she was running for president, I mobilized on Twitter and I said, hey guys, it would be great if we were able to raise $100,000 in the next hour to support Kamala, to help
You
catch
did
up
a
on
little
funding.
better than that.
And we did. We ended up raising $350,000.
Right.
And the fact that that kind of money is needed is crazy. We need to reform the whole campaign finance system, obviously. But we should be having more young people on these calls in general to make sure we're being as representative as we can be, because young voters are the future of this country.
Hey, David, before you go in the last 30 seconds, why Tim Walz your choice? Governor of Minnesota, for those who don't know.
Bottom line, it comes down to two things. One, he is one of the most experienced, probably the most experienced person of anybody out there that is a potential VP nominee, between his experience in Congress for over a decade in a super tough red district in rural Minnesota to his experience as an extremely successful governor. And the other one is he's a great communicator. He's just hilarious and he's super down. He is the blue wall. And if anybody wants to support our work with Leaders We Deserve, they can go to leaderswedeserve.com and donate $5 or $10. Again, we're funded not by corporations, but by grassroots donors. So thank you guys so much for having me on.
No,
David,
it was
it's great
a pleasure to have you.
Thanks so much.
And if you get a chance, we have a bunch of actual Democrats who never get challenged in the legislature here. So if you get the time, if you can prioritize back in Massachusetts, we'd love to have you field some candidates for us here.
Maybe.
Be well, David. Take care.
Thank
David.
you.
Get the red line better.
Thank you. Make the red line better. We
We've
will.
been speaking with David
try.
Hogg, gun reform activist with March for Our Lives and a Parkland survivor. His new group, Leaders We Deserve, and their website, leaderswedeserve.com, is available if you need more or want more information or want to donate. After a quick break, live from the National Association of Black Journalists Conference, GBH's Callie Crossley was in the crowd when Trump gave that disastrous interview. Callie's next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, taking over bookstores and social media feeds, a literary genre of new worlds and spicy romance, making global stars of authors and influencers. 3 authors on the meteoric rise of romantic fantasy or romantasy. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Liz Cheney, Andrew Lloyd Webber, news anchor Chris Wallace, and artificial intelligence entrepreneur Oren Etzioni. bostonspeakers.org.
I'm Hannah Loss, BPR producer, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Andrew Cabral sitting in for Marjorie. Marjorie's back on Monday. We're live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now live via Zoom from Chicago, where she's attending the National Association of Black Journalists Conference by GBH's Callie Crossley. She was in the room when Donald Trump was there for his racist and misogynistic moment. But it was not the first time, as I'm sure you know, that he's engaged in racist demagoguery. In fact, here's a clip of Trump in this heated exchange with Congressman George Miller from California in 1993, using discriminatory language about Native American-owned casinos that would have competed with his in Atlantic City.
Is this you discussing Indian blood? We're going to judge people by whether they have Indian blood, whether they're qualified to run a gaming casino or not?
That probably is me, absolutely. Because I'll tell you what, if you look at some of the reservations that you've approved, you, sir, in your great wisdom have approved, I will tell you right now, they don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like the Indians. Now, maybe we say politically correct or not politically correct. They don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like Indians to Indians.
Thank God that's not the test of whether or not people have rights in this country or not, whether or not they pass your look test.
Depends whether or not you're approving it, sir.
Callie is the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights at 89.7 at 6 o'clock. You can also hear Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. And, of course, she's the co-host for GBH's Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 on 89.7 and will be done here live in exactly 57 minutes. Callie, it's great to see you.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Callie.
How you doing?
Same as he ever was, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Well, before we get to what I think Kamala Harris brilliantly called the same old show, you've been a member of the National Association of Black Journalists for many, many years. So tell people what the NABJ conference is and what was featured this year.
So the National Association of Black Journalists was founded nearly 50 years ago by a group of journalists that wanted to advocate for those of us who are African American in newsrooms across the country. We also have public relation professionals as well. I have been going since the young man who became the president of the organization later in my time of coming, carried my bag from the garage into the hotel to let you know how big we've grown. It was a small number of people growing to this year, the largest ever attendance in the history of the organization. We have over 4,000 journalists here on the ground. So it's pretty impressive. Everybody is here this morning. Stephen Smith and Molly, I think her last name is pronounced Quirum, of ESPN did a live show. We have all kinds of topics that are relevant today. My mind is blown by the AI topics, conversations I've heard thus far, taken so many notes. Just left a conversation about being authentic in the newsroom, if you're a person of color, and what that means. One of the questions brought up, tongue-in-cheek, obviously, and a reference to former President Trump's appearance was, when did you turn black? So, you know, we pay attention to a lot of stuff going on here. It's been energizing. That I would say the appearance by the former president was a low point for me. That's my personal.
We're going to talk about that with you in a second, but staying on the mission of the association, in addition to the 4,000 black journalists who are there, we were reading this morning that the number of reporting journalists in this country are black is roughly half of what the black population of the country is, 6%. Reporting journalists as compared to roughly 12-13% of the population. Is the organization actively involved in that recruiting to the profession kind of thing?
Yeah, we have all kinds of scholarship programs for young people at every stretch. That's been one of the foundations of the organization, to try to find people who would follow in the footsteps by many path breakers, and I have to use that word advisedly, because there are people in our organization that literally open doors or knock down doors for the rest of us. And so we're trying to make sure the pipeline is there. As you know, because you're in the journalism field, we are, as a group, not trusted. So, trying to make certain that we earn the trust, keep the trust of our communities, and talk about all the issues of the day, and keep up with the relevant technology as well as we go into the future.
Callie, let me ask you first. There was criticism that NABJ actually extended the invitation before Trump ever opened his mouth. There was criticism of that. How did you feel about the fact that they extended the invitation, and did your opinion about whether they should have extended the invitation change after Trump said what he said, or did it stay the same throughout?
No, I think extending the invitation is fine. My criticism of my organization is that I didn't like the way that the format came to be. In other words, there was too much of his input into how he would appear. Many invitations have been issued to him or offered to him in the past. He's turned them all down. I think we have to assume that he decided to accept this one for obvious reasons, because the race is volatile at this moment, with Vice President Harris just having entered it. So my concern was, at every other point when we've had the presidential candidate Obama, presidential candidate George Bush, presidential candidate Bill Clinton, we set the rules. He didn't get to choose. None of those people got to choose who interviewed them. And it's very clear to me about how this came about is that there was some compromise in that. For one reason, Harris Faulkner from Fox was on the panel, and to my knowledge, she's been to NABJ maybe once. So what's that about? So that's my criticism. Absolutely, he's a candidate. Invite him. You may think you know what he's going to say, and he proved himself to say the same thing. But that wasn't for us to determine on the front end. The invitation was solid. I didn't like the way it was handled in terms of after he arrived.
One of the first things, I don't know if you're privy to this information, but one of the first things that Trump said after he's trashing Rachel Scott following her totally appropriate and good question to lead this thing off was, and I had to sit here for 35 minutes while you couldn't get your tech together. What I'm reading this morning is the reason for the delay wasn't because there were technical problems that weren't solved by NABJ, but because the Trump campaign was objecting to the simultaneous fact-checking that was being provided. Is that true?
That is absolutely true. So there we were sitting. And, it takes a process for all of us to go through security, and it's double security now, as you might imagine.
Of course.
So that with the kind of stanchions you go through that check you electronically, and then they had to go through everybody's bag, that was a long time. So we went through all of that process. It was ready to go. The sound system worked for everybody else before and continued to work while he was sitting there, because we could hear all of them clearly. So that was a problem. But we found out that, yes, he was objecting to the live fact-checking, though that had been part of the deal, as I understand it, which is why when Rachel Scott first came out, the first thing she said before asking her question was, this is being live fact-checked, to make it clear that his side had lost the battle on that, at least.
Speaking of Rachel Scott, the first question, I hope everybody has watched these 36 minutes, is she basically lists this relentless list of racist rhetoric that had come out of Donald Trump's mouth as president, as candidate, And she then says, why should black supporters vote for you in light of that? Here's part of Trump's answer from in response to Rachel Scott.
I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act?
And for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
I cannot tell a lie. I was thinking of you, Callie, at that minute as I'm watching this thing, saying, Callie Crossley is sitting in that room. What's she thinking? What was she thinking?
I was thinking, are you kidding me? And I was thinking, Rachel Scott, you poor thing, your sacrificial lamb up there, doing the good fight as she could. But he was obviously so mad about the live fact checking. He had to say something. And the way that he framed it, of course, was part of, in my opinion, the racist rant. So to suggest that an organization of black journalists would have poor equipment or non-working equipment is part of the whole scenario. None of that was true. As I said, many people had been on the stage, had spoken, same equipment, same people running the equipment. So that was just his way of sort of smacking back and showing his anger about being live fact-checked, which I wondered, why did he care? He was going to say what he was going to say. Why did he care whether he was live fact-checked or not? The whole room, you couldn't hear the room. The room was like, whoa, when he started in with that. It was a lot of response in the room.
Kelly, Colbert King wrote a piece for the Washington Post right after this interview where he made clear something that I think, the vast majority of people who are paying attention probably realized, which is NABJ was never the audience for his comments.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, I'm assuming that people pretty much understood that immediately in the room, and I'm wondering what the response in the room was to knowing that he was talking past them.
Well, we've had other people arrive and, say what they have to say, and it's clear that they want to speak to us, but also beyond us. So that's not unfamiliar to any of us in the room or even the people on the stage. We got that. What we couldn't understand is understanding that. And at one point, actually, Harris Faulkner, the person that he selected to be there, asked a question that I thought was quite relevant. What is your message to this group? Mm-hmm. She asked. And he went here, there, and everywhere and started talking about Vice President Harris turning black, never knowing she was black, all this nonsense, and never really answered the question. Again, this is someone he wanted to be on the panel to ask a question. She asked a reasonable question that he could not answer. So there was no message to this group, as we all understood even before. But, people wanted to hear what he had to say beyond us, particularly at this time. He's post-assassination attempt, 2 weeks into Vice President Harris's campaign. It was a ripe opportunity for him to say something new and fresh and maybe even try to figure out which direction he wanted to go in. What was clear to us in the room is it was much like someone said, like a comedian testing out new material. He was trying to figure out what was going to stick and what was going to get a response beyond us, as you said. It was fascinating, but it made and he seemed not to respond to the responses in the room, which were clear that, what are you talking about? And this is not making yourself heard, maybe, except for some of the people who are already convinced that he is the correct candidate.
I think he was a comedian checking out old material, actually, to see if it still worked, and it didn't. Callie, what is I know that it's not monolithic. There are 4,000 delegates there, as you said a minute ago. What's the scuttlebutt? What's the talk about the Harris campaign? We're 2 weeks in. I don't think she's had a bad day. I don't think Trump and Vance have had a good day. Honeymoon or just the beginning of what will be a continuing trend? What's the sense of the campaign's trajectory?
Well, first, let me address the fact that, we turned down an opportunity to hear from her virtually. A lot of people were upset about that. She said, her people said, there's just no way 2 weeks into the campaign that she could appear in person. But the thought was, if he's coming in person, you should come in person, blah, blah, blah. I think if it were a perfect world, that makes sense. But I think for a number of people, it was disappointing not to have an opportunity to hear from her, even though it may be virtually. So there is that. I think the sense in the room is there's a lot of momentum, but we'll have to see. And there's much discussion about the choice of the VP candidate, as you can imagine. And during this time, of course, we heard that Roy Cooper had taken himself out. And prior to that, my conversation with political reporters was that he was the closest to her because they'd served as attorneys general together. So the assumption was that he certainly was number one, or close to it in terms of choice. He took himself out of it. So now, in our group and listening to some of our heavyweight political reporters, it looks like from what they can assess, knowing nothing, is Josh Shapiro and Mike Kelly as maybe the top two. But we'll see, right?
Cooper's governor of North Carolina, for those who are familiar with
And
that.
she could be looking at him potentially as an AG. There certainly are people in the group of potential VPs that would be cabinet members, I would think, that she would want to select.
Yeah.
But what do you think about all of these groups, this sort of almost spontaneous grassroots identifying by race, by gender for Harris? The last one I heard about was South Asian males for Harris that are not only organizing to get out and do the grassroots work for her and to drum up votes, but are raising considerable amounts of money in these 2 and 3 hour phone calls.
I think it's quite a phenomenon, and we're going to be, pulling this apart, deconstructing it for many years to come, and certainly in the next 100 days. Of all those groups, for me, one of the most significant was white women for Harris, because if we know the stats from the last time that former president won, white women were all in his camp. So, and that included college-educated white women. That did not only include white women who were not college educated. So that's a fascinating, for me, that was an interesting move. We'll see if that has impact beyond the groups of women who were on that call. There were a lot of them. They raised a lot of money, as you said. So it is interesting. I don't know what to make of it quite yet. I think it'll be interesting to see if it sticks beyond Labor Day. This is when it counts, as you know, when people, regular folks, start to kick in and pay attention to the organizing efforts for those people who are moved by others that they respect, having shown support for Vice President Harris. That can have an impact, but we'll have to see. I hope it's not just, those groups of people, those who happen to be online in all of those sessions, and that's it. I'd be interested to see if this is really an organizational tactic that is something fresh that we haven't seen in the past and that may show up in future campaigns.
Callie, before you go, I'm just looking at my notes, and I hand wrote Callie in Chicago, and I just flashed to me, I hope I get this right, one of my favorite Callie adventures was when nobody could get tickets to Hamilton, correct me if I'm wrong, Callie and her friends fly into Chicago, have lunch, go see Hamilton, because not only tickets were available, but affordable, and then flew home. Did I get that right?
That's correct. With a major stop at Garrett's Popcorn. If anybody knows Garrett's Popcorn, it's a real serious popcorn in Chicago that's very famous. It's all over in ABJ. Yeah, we picked up our popcorn and came home afterwards.
Excellent. Callie, good to see you. Good luck in the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
We've been speaking with Callie Crossley. She's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch on Sunday nights on 89.7 at 6 o'clock. You can also catch her Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. She's also the co-host of GBH's The Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 o'clock. Today's Week in Review will be from the BPL studio. After a quick break, it's food policy analyst Corby Kummer. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Judy Ewell in for Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, local residents and experts tell us how sealing no-fault evictions could impact renters in Massachusetts. Also, why state lawmakers ended their formal session without approving major bills. Plus, today on the Joy Beat, we'll introduce you to Friends of the Blue Hills, the nonprofit responsible for preserving that area's great natural beauty. Those stories and more starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Comcast, offering Xfinity Internet, designed to provide a connection for home networks so everyone can be online at once, even during peak hours. More information at xfinity.com. And the MBTA commuter rail, providing public transportation service to over 170 cities and towns in Massachusetts. Just take the train. You can plan your trip at mbta.com/massbytrain.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan is not here. She's back on Monday. Andrew Cabral is kindly sitting in. I am Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu will join us for an hour of Ask the Mayor at the library on Tuesday. And in 40 minutes, the Culture Show will be here live as well. If you're here, stick around. If you're not, you might want to come on by. We're joined now on Zoom by food policy analyst, multiple James Beard winner, Corby Kummer. Corby's the executive director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, senior editor at the Atlantic, and senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Hello, Corby Kummer.
Hello, Jim. Hello, Andrew.
Hi,
hey there.
How are you? Corby, this sort of surprised me in a way. Can you tell us a little bit about the Olympic Committee sort of dipping its toe into the water of sponsorship? I mean, and the reason I say this surprises me is because I've always sort of thought of the Olympics as keeping the money end separate from the athletic end, even though I know the two are connected. So tell us what the Olympic Committee is doing with regard to big soda.
I don't think there's anything new about the Olympic Committee soliciting sponsorships to defray the unbelievable costs of any city. You know, Boston, I think, has breathed a big sigh of relief that it didn't get chosen. London spent $17 billion, and Paris has tried to keep it to $6 or $7 billion, but it was $1 billion more than they thought. So, Olympic Committee, everybody costs lots of money. Sponsorship, sports sponsorships, they've been big for decades. Coca-Cola has been very big, for example, in public schools, in sponsoring sports. And they've sponsored the Olympics for at least 2 or 3 cycles and probably more. The article I think we both saw didn't specify how many. But there was a new Kick Big Soda Out of Sports campaign done by Vital Strategies. And I know Vital Strategies is a really great, excellent, global, somewhat wonky health policy organization. They've come out big and strong against plastic pollution, carbon emissions, water depletion, but most of all health, and most of all marketing sugary beverages to children.
You know, one of the things I loved in this story was they talk about athletes themselves taking a stand. They have Ronaldo, the great soccer player, at Euro 2020. When he's doing a press conference, they plop 2 bottles of Coke in front of him, and he deliberately moves them to the side so they're not in the shot. So it's pretty great. And I'm assuming these athletes who are at the pinnacle of health find it as objectionable as someone like you does, Corby Kummer.
I think it depends on the athlete. Presumably they do, but you know, it's irresistible to read stories about major sports teams and leagues having different dietitians and nutritionists. And yes, there's a lot of healthful food, but there's a lot of selective junk food. And it doesn't matter. Athletes are burning so many calories, they can do whatever they want. But bad habits are bad habits, and they last after athletic exertion. So it's just bad to be drinking sugary beverages regularly.
I want to retract what I just said, because I just realized I drive by the McDonald's on Social Sphere Road where Olympian Jason Tatum, after the Celtics won the championship, had a sign that said, "Congratulations to our customer, Jason Tatum." So he's obviously a McDonald's kind of guy.
No, I mean, I don't think that the fact that it might not be good generally stops people from...
Doesn't stop me.
And we may have occasion to speak about that.
We may, a little bit later in the show. That's true.
But, Corby, what I'm thinking is that there is a bit of a slippery slope argument about this. I mean, to be clear, the Olympic Committee was urged to end the big soda, the Coca-Cola sponsorship. There's no indication that they have actually done it. But wouldn't you think that they would be concerned that there may be legitimate reasons for sort of disdaining the sponsorships of things, companies that make products that are sugary or bad for you, but that also is a slippery slope. It easily leads into disdaining sponsorships for companies that just do things we don't like.
This is the problem. Well, let's stick to food. When you're trying to compare food to tobacco, and this campaign we've been talking about says, remember when we kicked tobacco out of big sports. Tobacco is a poison. It kills. There's no controversy at all. Soda manufacturers can make the argument that it's all dose dependent, that it's not necessarily addictive. There are different definitions of addictive. Yes, it is a slippery slope when it comes to food. As far as one company manufacturing munitions that are going to Russia to fight Ukraine through some other branch, that does get to a slippery slope, and it depends on the press and customers exposing it. With the IOC, it would have to be enough sports leagues, enough countries that join the Olympics and pay the colossal fees to join the Olympics protesting a certain product and sponsorship to get it booted out. And I don't see that happening.
I want to make sure we agree, though, that while I think all three of us say it'd be better if Coke wasn't the sponsor, do we all agree that if you're an Italian gymnast by the name of Giorgia Via, it is fine to have your sponsor be wheels of Parmesan cheese? Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
There is the Italian
real.
gymnast.
That's not AI.
With look at her doing a tumble over some Parmesan cheese. Are you okay with that, Corby? How great a photo is that?
Parmesan is the king of cheese, and everyone should have it in their refrigerator at all times. But Parmigiano Reggiano, which was her sponsor, is not a current sponsor of Giorgio Villa.
Ooh.
They're a past sponsor. The old social media and the image you just described are resurfacing because of her star turn in the Olympics. What a good investment they made.
You know, my dream in life would be to have Parmesan wheels be my sponsor. That really wouldn't get much better than that.
Well, I actually have a suggestion for how she could get a different Parmesan to sponsor her. For fans of Arrested Development, and I am a huge fan of Arrested Development, people will remember that Lucille Bluth was always surprised by her private investigator, beautifully played by Martin Mull, who went by the name of Jean Parmesan, who used to dress up in disguises, and here's how she would always respond.
Don't get up, I just find the supplies because I'm a private detective. Jean Parmesan, how are you doing?
Oh, Gene, isn't he the best?
Okay, let me point out that Parmesan is a generic term that American cheesemakers like from Wisconsin can use. Parmigiano and Parmigiano Reggiano, those are trade terms that are protected by this international law. And Parmigiano Reggiano was Giorgio Villa's sponsors until 2022.
Little stuffy there, Corby Comer. Come on. Okay, so Corby, there was a great story.
It's the greatest cheese in the world.
It is excellent. I think this is the New York Times about the impact of climate change on some of our favorite foods and some of our favorite restaurants. And they talk about the fact that they focus on California, where so much of the produce and nuts and whatever from all over the country come, that thirsty crops, as they call them, the almonds of the world, 1 gallon of water for every almond or something? Arugula is becoming totally impractical, not only environmentally dangerous, but that they have to move to drought-resistant, that's their term, products, like apparently is happening in Australia. And some of those drought-resistant products I've never heard of, rattlesnake beans, amaranth, those sort of things. This is obviously serious business. What's going on in this front?
First of all, you've probably seen amaranth because even though it's a fancy name, it grows wild, including in New England. It looks like dandelion and dandelion greens. And it can either be eaten as a green or, I imagine, a different variety makes a grain that's absolutely terrific. The gallon thing, this article written by an Australian environmental writer and culture critic who knows Australia. That's why he's talking, Aaron Timms is my name, a lot about Australian water laws and water use laws, and the fines are so strict that restaurants have indeed began embracing to embrace drought-tolerant foods. So they say that almonds and pistachios in California require 4 feet in depth of water per acre of irrigated land. And then they say, but apricots, pears, plums, and walnuts require more than 3 feet. So we can start feeling bad about apricots, pears, plums, and walnuts. But of course, if you see these stone fruits in our local farmers markets, don't feel bad. They're probably not irrigated. They're probably from naturally irrigated orchards. It's a delicate crop in New England, but it's a great one. And this is the month they're going to start to appear.
Okay, so now this just frustrates me tremendously. Last week we talked about those strains of wheat that were preserved by and collected by and preserved by the scientist. I can remember the first name is Walter. I can't remember the last name. I know it begins with an S. And how how precious they were, and how those were being developed essentially, in some respects, to be sort of climate change resistant strains of grain. Is there going to be no aspect of how we produce our food and whether we can produce our food that's not going to be affected by climate change?
Probably everything is going to be affected by climate change. Wine regions are changing completely. Canada is growing wine places that were way too cool to grow wine in places like Northern California, Napa, and Sonoma. They're having to change their varieties because there's so much sugar, there's so much heat that they're producing wines that are too powerful, too heavy in alcohol. But Jim, you haven't heard of amaranth, but you will hear of tepary beans and mesquite. My Food Leaders Fellowship at Aspen recently met in Tucson, and we went to a farm on a reservation, and we bought a lot of mesquite flour and tepary beans. These are incredibly drought tolerant, and U.S. and Northeastern chefs should start using them on menus so we can take Jim to enjoy them at a local restaurant.
Well, is the federal government moving toward drought resistance? Because we sort of take a lot of guidance from the Department of Agriculture and others. Are we far behind on scaling up these foods?
No, I should credit Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack has pumped billions into what they call climate smart agriculture. It's a whole range of approaches to agriculture to reduce the number of pesticides, reduce the expense of the inputs you put in, less tillage, more preserving soil. That's regenerative agriculture, to care as much about soil as you do about the plant. So no, U.S. policy is trying to encourage farmers to use more environmentally friendly methods. I've seen no penalties that say, Jim, if you buy another bag of pistachios and almonds, you're going to be charged double because you have a monthly allotment. I haven't seen any of these rules about growing or selling water-thirsty crops.
So how come there's not a campaign with real people, though, encouraging the likes of me not to buy an almond, but to buy a rattlesnake bean? And obviously, if the demand isn't there, they're going to switch to rattlesnake beans. I'm serious, by the way.
I know.
Because the large companies with a lot of money for marketing have invested in those very popular crops that appeal to people. And Native American tribes, they have limited production, and they are incredibly sustainable, but they can't afford to advertise.
By the way, before we move on to a scary topic, because I not only eat boar's head, but I also eat boar's head liverwurst. One of my favorite. Does anybody eat liverwurst here besides me? Nobody, right? Absolutely nobody? One person. Two in the whole damn audience. It's pathetic. Before we get there, I think you want to post this, don't? Because it makes Jamie. Who did the image? Jamie and Aiden, because this is what they do. Here's an AI image of me as, I guess that's my cheese sponsorship.
That's nice.
I like that. And sort of I'm aging like the cheese, I guess you could say. In any case, thank you very much for that. Okay, so Listeria is upon us, and I don't mean to make light of it at all, because it could be deadly kind of thing. Boar's head, what is it, 7 million tons?
Yeah.
How many is this?
7 million pounds.
And particularly
71 products.
Okay, and one of the 71 products is liverwurst that I not only eat, but I eat by putting a hole in a tube and then squeezing, I know, which is totally disgusting. I admit that. but we're here to tell the truth. So this is huge. I mean, boar's head, by the way, for those who don't eat cold cuts, which you should not eat to begin with because they're ultra processed, I know all that. It's really sort of the high end, it's sort of the luxury brand of cold cuts as opposed to some of the crap, but it's still really bad for you. So what should we know about this Listeria thing, and what precautions should people take and all that sort of stuff?
So if you look at the label, it has a sell-by date anywhere from July 29th to October 17th. It was processed at a plant in Jarratt, Jarratt, Virginia, where Boar's Head has paused operations. You can go online to the Boar's Head website, which has a full list of all the products, where they were manufactured, and when they were sold, where, and they'll give you a full refund. So you can go in and take it in. You just stop eating it. Listeria happens every year, and it kills something like 260 people a year. 1,600 people get sick from Listeria. Remember Blue Bell ice cream in Texas, a cheese plant in Western Massachusetts that I remember. It's enormously difficult to find the bacteria. It hides, as I recall, in pipes. And so you have to completely shut down a plant, disassemble all of the ventilation, all of the water systems, and go through the pipes and clean them. It is really pernicious, and it can completely fell and even bankrupt a company. But others, do you remember the Georgia peanut factory that was a flagrant violator of food safety rules and was
knowingly? Yeah, they knew about it, and they
knew about it. This was under the Trump administration, and they were very cynical, and they shipped out products, but there was Listeria in those products too. It's in many, many kinds of food products.
I don't know if it's your area of expertise, but you mentioned, since you said it could bankrupt a company, I remember when the Tylenol scare happened, it killed people, right? A bunch of people died. One of my many predictions that proved to be totally wrong is either Tylenol is going to have to go out of business or change its name, and obviously it didn't do either, and it's prospering. Does a Boar's Head, and the only reason I care is because I assume they have thousands and thousands of employees, does a Boar's Head survive? Did Blue Bell, whatever the hell it was, survive? Do they survive?
Tylenol, as I'm pretty sure, is taught in business schools.
I think it is.
Example of crisis management. It was Johnson & Johnson. They immediately pulled all Tylenol on all shelves across the world. They forfeited billions of dollars to say, we take this seriously. They could afford to do it, and then they changed the packaging. They changed the labeling. So, they were huge, and they had the money to do it. I don't know. I don't see in this Washington Post article about Boar's Head that they pulled all these products, they've recalled them. The USDA did immediately issue a recall, and under the Obama administration, both USDA and FDA were strengthened in their ability to actually recall products instead of telling the manufacturers, we'd really appreciate it if you would think about recalling this product. So there's more teeth in the ability to recall dangerous products now than there were.
Now, is the Listeria, you said it's in the pipes, but is that dirty plant conditions, or is it, in the bacteria's in the food which is moving through the pipes?
As I recall, it's airborne, and I don't know if it's bad sanitation. It's seldom blamed on poor personnel tactics. It's different from contaminated meat that has to do with workers being improperly trained or cross-contamination. I don't remember reading any kind of here's how Listeria enters a factory. What I remember reading is it's a bear to try to get rid of it and find out where it is.
Before you go quickly, have you ever had liverwurst cross your lips in your whole life? No way.
No, I like liverwurst.
You do?
I'm a big fan of liverwurst.
And since you said that, liverwurst, Swiss cheese, Dijon mustard, red onion on rye toast. Does it get any better than that, Corby Comer?
No, mortadella. There are a lot of Italian products that are similar to liverwurst, but there's something really fabulous about liverwurst, and you and I share that taste.
You've warmed my heart.
Everything you just said makes me want to walk out into traffic.
Right into traffic. Corby, it's great to see you.
Don't make it Boar's Head.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate
Bye,
it. Corby Comer.
We've been speaking with food policy analyst Corby Kummer. He's executive director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a senior editor at The Atlantic, and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy. After a quick break, we're going to be opening the phone and the text lines. Is the threat of potentially fatal bacteria the thing that's going to get you to cut back on cold cuts and other food you shouldn't be eating in the first place? Your calls and texts are next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, are the Olympics delivering entertainment gold? From stunning, gravity-defying images of the surfing competition, to celebrity commentators serving unconventional coverage, to a reenactment of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper drawing scorn and scandalizing religious groups. Plus, we raise a glass to some great news. The legendary music venue Great Scott has a new home. That and more on The Culture Show's Week in Review, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And M&M Skylights, installing and servicing a wide range of commercial and residential Velux skylight products. You can find more information about their installation process and schedule a consultation at mmskylights.com. And Furniture Consignment Gallery, curating pre-owned luxury home furnishings for over 30 years. Current inventory is available to view in their showrooms in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth. More at FurnitureConsignment.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Andrew Cabral is in for Marjorie. Marjorie is back on Monday. Mayor Wu is with us at the library on Tuesday. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We were just speaking to Corby Kummer about this boar's head recall. I just got 7 million pounds of deli meat over concerns about Listeria. All the fuss when the non-toxic deli meat, you could argue, is just as likely to send you an early grave. Until the end of the show, we're going to talk about unhealthy foods. Let's be euphemistic. And you can call or text at 877-301-8970. Are you the kind of person feeling a sense of loss, as I do, over those 7 million pounds of deli meat deliciousness? Correcting your colleagues who call it boar head, which one of my colleagues did this morning instead of the correct boar's head. Or maybe you're grateful for the excuse to go with the healthier options you tend to avoid. And what are the other foods in your life that you really should give up but just can't seem to be able to quit? Like hot dogs, for example. This is a University of Michigan study that allegedly, well, not allegedly, they said their study showed that every hot dog you eat takes 36 minutes off your life. Every single hot dog you eat. The number's 877-301-8970. What processed junk food thing, processed or not, do you eat despite knowing it's terrible because, damn it, you just like it? What's on that list for you there, Andrew Cabral?
I like bread. Everybody in my family likes bread, especially if it's freshly made bread. So that's one of my really, really bad ones. And I like pasta.
Well, before you do, I don't think freshly made bread, I could be wrong, someone can correct us. I think the bread that's dangerous is like the packaged crap that you buy like at a store
because
that's in
they
a plastic
use
deal.
Sodium as a preservative. No, that's true. But I mean, I like bread generally. I prefer to have it freshly baked. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to settle for a decent loaf of store-bought bread.
How about a hot dog? Have you ever had a hot dog?
Oh, I have. Yes, I have.
How many hot dogs would you say you've had?
Over the course of my life?
Yes, exactly. Because we're going to do the math.
I don't have them very often as an older adult. I don't eat them very often.
Why would you not do that?
I don't know. I sort of prefer hamburgers to hot dogs.
Okay.
I just don't have the desire to eat them all that often.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I happen to have an article, and this was not planned, from the Telegraph in the UK. These are the 5 worst foods to eat which shorten your life. You ready?
Yeah.
Number 1 is, of course, hot dogs.
Of course.
Number 2 is bacon. You know what number 3 is on the list?
What?
Cheeseburgers. Cheeseburgers are number 3 on the bad list. Number 4 is soft drinks, even diet, all of them horrible. Packaged snacks and bread. Yeah, cheeseburgers. Nothing like a cheeseburger, is there?
Yeah, but compared to hot dogs, cheeseburgers only take like 8.8 minutes off of your life. How many minutes does a single hot dog take?
36 minutes, according to the University of
And
Michigan.
how many hot dogs a day or a week do you eat?
I would say, I'm not proud of this, by the way, but I want to be honest with our audience. This is really humiliating, actually. I probably eat 2 to 3 hot dogs a week. And I know that's not something I should brag about. I'm not bragging.
But you are looking for a quality dog. You're not just eating the rot gut that you can get anywhere.
If the casing is not crisp, so that it bursts in your mouth. What are you laughing about? If the casing is not crisp, so that it explodes in your mouth when you take, you're with me on this, right? I tell the truth.
That's why I told you about soggies.
Oh, so tell us. I never heard of soggies. You're a Rhode Island kid.
Yeah.
What is a soggy?
So Rhode Island has some things that are particular to Rhode Island. So people who are from Rhode Island know, it's Dell's lemonade. You make coffee milk. You buy autocrat coffee syrup. You put it in milk and you drink it. Coffee milk is a real thing. Rhode Island clam cakes are a real thing. You can get them here at a few places, but you really should be in Rhode Island. And Soggy's hot dogs, which have the best casing and were like a staple when my father loved them, so he would always buy them. And they are a perfect, everything that you want in a hot dog that you've described, Soggy's hot dogs.
And because of you, I'd never heard of them. I ordered them today online. You know how much they cost per dog?
Yeah.
$6.
Yeah.
$5 and some insane cents. But I am checking. Now, Jamie asked a great question before we get to the calls and the text. Does the math on the hot dog include the time it takes you to eat it? So, for example, if it takes you 8 minutes to eat a hot dog, is it take an additional 36 minutes off your life, or do you take the 8 minutes off the 36 and it only takes 28 additional minutes off your life?
But you're actually burning calories in the time it takes you to chew it.
Fabulous point.
So you may be adding a little bit in terms of exercise to your life as you're taking off the other 36 minutes.
I like your style. And let me just say also, if there is anybody, again, we always say this, we don't take calls out of order with one exception today. If you are somebody who not only likes liverwurst, but cuts a hole in the end of the tube and squirts it into your mouth, we will pop you up to the top of the list so that Andrea realizes I am not aberrational in that, even though I'm aberrational in this audience, I am not aberrational in life. Where do you want to go first?
Tom is in the car.
Hey, Tom.
Good afternoon, Andrea. Good afternoon, Jim.
Hey.
Jim, I've loved liverwurst.
Oh.
Yep. I've loved liverwurst ever since I was a little kid.
Beautiful.
Because my dad liked it, and he swore by Mother Goose brand. I don't know.
Never heard of it.
You ought to try that if you
I
can't
will.
get. And he made sandwiches on rye bread with tomato and ketchup. Sorry, no mustard. And we'd have them at the beach. And that's, since I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I could never pronounce liverwurst when I was that age. So in my family, liverwurst is oopie doops.
That's close enough.
I called it when I was a kid.
Now, Tom, in this audience here at the library, I asked before how many people ate liverwurst. Only 2 raised their hands. Could you briefly speak to everybody else and explain what they're missing? Concisely, if you can, Tom. Go ahead.
Well, I don't like liver and onions. My dad was a big fan of that. Liverwurst is ambrosia from Germany, and you ought to give it a try.
That is a beautiful sales job. Tom, thank you.
There's no liver
much
in
for the call.
liverwurst?
I think there is. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know. But it's
that's
ground
the
up kind of thing. You don't like chicken liver either?
No, I don't like liver.
Chopped chicken liver
I don't
you
really
don't
like the liver of anything.
Doesn't taste like liver. Now, your piece of liver is one thing. I'm not eating a piece of liver. Chopped chicken liver, liverwurst is a whole different. I'm not eating it from boar's head for the time being.
Isn't it very rich? Isn't it?
It's fairly rich.
Because pate is
It's rich.
goose,
it's like pate in a
yeah.
tube kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Where do you want to go next?
Lauren from Marblehead.
Hello, Lauren.
Good afternoon, you two.
And to you.
Hi.
A couple quick things before I get to my nemesis, but Andrea, I do have a, sorry to break this to you because I love bread too, but my nutritionist says the more white bread, the sooner you're dead.
I think it's true.
No, bread is for people who like bread is a real thing.
By the way, so you don't feel so bad, Lauren, you know who loves white bread with sliced boiled potatoes and butter on it? Marjorie Egan. Marjorie Egan. White bread, sliced boiled potatoes with butter. Go ahead, Lauren.
Good Lord.
Exactly.
So again, I do have mine, but Jim, I did want to point out to you that my father too loved the liver, but he was wonderful, but he was in the service. But one of his other favorite meals, if it puts this into any perspective for you, is a grill. He would grill up Spam sandwich on white Wonder bread with Miracle Whip, margarine, and a processed American cheese.
That is really disgusting. Let me just tell you right there. How old did he live till? Like 30?
No, he was actually a trim man and very athletic. But, I think it was a little bit of the time.
Did he ever go to the Spam Museum in Minnesota or no?
No, but he did once ask when technology was new. He asked my sisters and I why we called junk mail spam, and we all just barreled out laughing.
That's an excellent point. Hey, Lauren, that was an excellent
Never had
call.
Spam in
Thank
my
you.
life.
I've actually had Spam.
Never eaten at a Taco Bell or a Chipotle.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah, no.
Isn't Spam like the food of Hawaii or
Yeah,
it's like the
I've just never had Spam.
state thing of whatever there. Okay, fine. By the way, this is outrageous. Ann from Westport says, please tell Jim they sell soggies at Market Basket for $5.99 a pound.
Really?
I just spent $5.99 per dog because of you.
You might be able to cancel it, but when you go to Market Basket, will you pick me up some?
I would, actually.
Thank
I would.
you.
I'll buy you
Yeah.
a thing. Anonymous texter says, you're letting the liverwurst squirters jump the line because they could die at any moment. That is a very fine point.
And Kara on Cape Cod says, liverwurst and listeria. I've never been happier to be vegan.
Well, that's probably true. Hey, Alan Clinton, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for calling. We appreciate it.
Yeah, my go-to poison is Nathan hot dogs.
Oh,
I mean, they're really to die for, aren't they?
But I'm bummed. Thank you.
Those Nathan's hot
but
dogs are good.
As far as
Thank
as far as that 36 minutes that you lose, nobody enjoys those last 36 minutes anyway. So go ahead and have the hot dog.
By the way, I don't know if you've ever heard me say, Al, since we're on the set, when I went to college in Philadelphia, my roommates and I'd say every few months at midnight or so, would get in the car, drive 90 miles to 43rd and Broadway, where Nathan's then was. It's not there anymore. Get 2 hot dogs, get back in the car, and drive back to Philadelphia. So you're talking to the converted. Al, thank you for the call. Did you ever
Can
have
I
Nathan's
just tell
hot
you
dog?
that Liverwurst Squirters is going to be the best band name ever?
That is actually. Did you ever have a Nathan's hot dog?
Oh, yeah.
They're really good.
They are really
They're
good. I will
really
say they
good.
are really good.
Really good. And they cook them beautifully, too.
The last time I remember the last time I had a hot dog was at Tony's Clam Shack.
Oh.
I didn't, for some reason, have fish or clams. I had a hot dog.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that. Where do you want to go?
Let's talk to Aaron in Seekonk.
Before you speak, an anonymous texter said Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks that Hebrew National was behind the Listeria outbreak. Now, for those who don't get the joke, check out Jewish Laser and you'll know. I'm sorry, Aaron. That's a pretty good line, texter. Go ahead, Aaron. Welcome to the show. Hi.
It's all good. I appreciated the line. Hello.
Good. Go ahead.
So I feel like I don't drink. I don't smoke. I'm not a big soda drinker. You got to have your vices. So Listeria or not, I'm not giving up my Italian sandwich.
By the way, you don't have to, let's be clear here. You avoid Boar's Head. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Listeria is in one company's product. 71 products. So keep doing the Italian sub. Just don't do Boar's Head Italian sub for the time being. Aaron, thank you very much for the call.
But you know what? There are people who are sort of like Italian sandwich connoisseurs. I actually know 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they put together their Italian sandwich, and then they have the oil and vinegar, the dressing over it.
Oh, yeah.
And I know these are people like Aaron who would die before they give it up.
You know what the Italian sandwich of the Newsfeed Cafe is called?
What?
A gym.
Oh, really?
It's really true. It's a gym sandwich. When we started here, they asked Marjorie, pick your favorite sandwich, and she picked some pathetic, like turkey and Swiss or something. And I, of course, picked an Italian sub, which is really good for you, by the way. It's really, really good for you.
So I hear.
It's Todd in Attleboro. Hello there.
Hey, thanks. So, Attleboro, I feel more like a Rhode Islander.
Yeah. Why?
From
'Cause it's really
Massachusetts, but thanks for mentioning Stuffy's Coffee Milk Dells. Blade meat is amazing, if you know what that is.
Say it again, Todd.
Blade meat. It's blade meat.
Blade meat?
Marjorie would know what it is. Yeah. It's
Well, wait, but
marinated
Andrea's a Rhode Island kid.
Blade meat.
Blade meat?
Right, yeah.
What is it?
Fall River, New Bedford, a Portuguese community down here. They've got really good marinated pork.
Steak.
You slow cook it. And that's one of the best things in this area. In Attleboro, I feel more Rhode Island than Massachusetts.
Is it steak?
And I love liverwurst.
Is it BLADE? Correct. We'll look it up. BLADE.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's steak.
Is it steak? Say something, Todd. Is it
No,
steak?
it's not. It's pork.
It's pork.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Okay, well, I'll have one of those tonight, too. Todd, thank you for the call. Jamie or Aiden, get on the job here and find out what it is and send us a picture. Do something, okay? 877-301-897. What inspired this conversation is you should be really careful. You should not eat Boar's Head products, 71 of them for at least the time being, including liverwurst, because of Listeria, which actually can kill you. It doesn't just make you sick. It can kill you in the worst of circumstances, which led us to have a discussion about what is the horrible thing in your repertoire that you really can't resist, regardless of its health impacts.
Becky from Maine put in a vote for Maine red hot dogs because, it's hot dogs plus red dye.
Oh, doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's really good for you.
Yeah.
By the way, they're great hot dogs that are not in fabulous casing. I just realized the one exception is some joint. What's the name of the place in Worcester? Does anybody know where they have a hot dogs that are like $1 a piece and you get nobody? Chili and what's it called? Coney Island. Thank you, Aiden. Coney Island. Aren't they like $1 a piece or like $1.50 or something? They're really cheap and they're really quite good. Blade meat, thank you, colleagues, has its roots in Portuguese cuisine. This dish features a cut of meat from the shoulder of the cow.
That is beef. That's not pork.
Well, whatever.
That's
a good point.
Yeah.
After being meticulously sliced and marinated, slowly cooked, the signature note of the dish, however, is its distinct spicy kick, even though we have no idea how it got its spicy kick, right? Is that the... Oh, Zoe, thank you.
We used to have blade steak. That's what that was. But I didn't... Yeah, I didn't...
Zoe, find out how it gets the spicy kick and let us know in the next minute and 2 seconds. Carol in Framingham, quickly. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi there.
So glad to be on.
Great.
I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so my husband and I are foodies.
Yeah.
My husband adores liverwurst. I buy Boar's Head liverwurst for him.
Not right now, you're
And
not.
the reason why, the secret ingredient is bacon mixed in with the liver. Why do people not like liver fried in a pan with onions? Because it doesn't have the bacon.
Oh.
You're drooling.
So there's
Jim is
bacon.
drooling.
There's bacon in liverwurst?
Yes, read the ingredients on Boar's Head.
This is the happiest I've been in months. Go ahead, Carol.
But that contributes to the loss of longevity.
Well, I know. So there's that. I understand.
My second point.
Quickly.
I'm a frequent Boar's Head buyer.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, my local market had an empty case, everything removed. By Wednesday, they had refilled the case with new products, including Boar's Head, but not the liverwurst. A few products were missing, but they had already put in fresh supplies for everybody.
Excellent.
So don't scare people.
Well, I'm not scaring people, but be careful. Go to the website, check out the whatever. Carol, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
We're not going to have to. I'm Andrea Cabral.
And let me say, it is wonderful to work with you as always. You are terrific at this. Andrew.
What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show. Next on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Newbury Court, a full-service retirement community in Concord, Massachusetts. Newbury Court is committed to creating active, independent lifestyles for persons 62 and over. More at Newbury Court.
Gymnastics team to swimming with Michael Phelps to calling the badminton highlights. We look at what the celebrity court, that and more next on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Vice President Harris has secured enough votes from Democratic delegates to become the party's nominee for president. Her campaign, still less than 2 weeks old, is that's following a massive multi-nation prisoner swap. The Freed Americans will be evaluated to ABC's Good Morning America. Stock market slumped after weaker than expected jobs data raised fear the U.S. could slip into a recession. NPR's Rafael Nam has more.
For months now, the economy had been doing much better than anybody expected. Investors knew it couldn't last, not with interest rates at their highest in over 20 years. The question was how much the economy would slow. Well, now there's some bad news. New data show employers added only 104
and promotion.
Harvard says it will begin a search for Garber's successor in 2026.
From 15,000 rides in May of 2023 to 27,000 rides this May. And in June, the bus service's ridership increased from 35,000 up to 65,000 passengers, proving yet again people like free. Red Sox and Texas tonight. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, which monitors safe driving habits to determine a personalized rate at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, offering professional local, long-distance, office, and piano moving with 23 locations throughout New England and across the country. More information at gentlegiant.com. And Chevalier Theatre, Rumors of Fleetwood Mac, a tribute to Fleetwood Mac, returns to the Chevalier Theatre in Medford Square on Sunday, August 11th at 8. Tickets and information are available at chevaliertheatre.com.
Welcome to the Culture Show, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen. I'm joined by co-host Edgar B. Horwick III and Culture Show contributor Lisa Simmons. She is the artistic and executive director of the Roxbury International Film Festival and program manager at Mass Cultural Council. It's time for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Here's what it sounded like.
And the flame has been lit for the Paris Games.
What's crackin'? It's the one and only Snoop Double G, a.k.a. Hope Dog. And I'm about to do something that's unheard of. I'm about to go on roll with the U.S. Men's Olympic team. So follow the dog. Let's go.
Iconic Boston music venue that was forced to close during the pandemic is now about to make a comeback.
Yeah, Great Scott and Alston announcing their plans to reopen today. The venue brought live music to the Alston neighborhood for more than 4 decades before closing in 2020.
How the hell did it happen? But now, at this point, Mass MoCA sounds like it's inevitable, but it was never inevitable.
I'm thinking, like everybody else, what is contemporary art? And then when I saw a little bit of it, I thought, oh my God, what is that stuff?
Oh, I don't care what mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Thanks to this unique intergovernmental treaty, UNESCO can bring together the world's nations and people to harness the protection of humanity's most exceptional cultural and natural heritage.
Maya Rudolph is returning to Saturday Night Live for another term.
It's pronounced Kamala. It rhymes with Kamala. It is Camila Cabello. Bitch is Kamala.
Well, as you just heard, we just can't quit the Olympics, from Celine Dion making a near operatic return at the opening ceremony to Snoop Dogg reinventing play-by-play commentary. Plus, a pagan performance gets panned, misinterpreted as a parody of the Last Supper, riling religious groups along the way. Closer to home, legendary music venue Great Scott gets a new home. It's a milestone for Mass MoCA, marking its 25th anniversary, while a Cape Cod modernist masterpiece is saved. And from Iran to Italy, that's also the hope for a number of other properties as UNESCO creates 24 new cultural heritage sites. But first up, the Olympics Week 1. There's much to discuss, from the opening ceremony that stunned and scandalized to celebrity commentary, including Snoop Dogg's badminton shuttlecock soliloquy. He's better at the Olympics than I am. So let's talk about the opening ceremony, which I think that people are still talking about. I mean, I will just tip my hand and say I thought it was fabulous, because this was under the hands of the French artistic director, theater director, Thomas Joly, and I think he brought this obviously very French theatrical vibe to the opening ceremony. The first time we didn't see it in a stadium, of course, it was all along the River Seine, and lots of musical acts along the way, which we can sort of digest. But Lisa, let me bounce it over to you. What did you think?
I mean, unbelievable, amazing, what you would totally expect to come from Paris, France. I mean, I think that really it was about diversity, right? It was about doing something outside the box. It was about inclusion. right? And I think that was the most important part of it.
Yeah, I mean, you both hit on it. It was very, very French. which is like part of the goal, right? I mean, it was colorful, it was inventive, it was beautiful. In some ways, it was a mixed bag, right? It felt like it was sprawling all over the place. Some of the dancing was great, some of it was okay. You know, some of the music was fantastic, some of it was okay.
But it was a spectacular.
But it was an absolute
what it was supposed
spectacle.
to be, right?
Yeah.
It was a spectacle.
Well, it's funny because it reminded me a little bit, maybe this sounds horrible, but of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day
that's what
parade.
it is. Right. Yes.
Because we kept going from the parade on the Seine and seeing all of the athletes, although I think the athletes got a little bit of short shrift, but then bouncing over to the musical acts. Of course, in the U.S., in New York, it's all the acts, the Broadway shows doing their numbers in front of Macy's.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit better to be in Paris along
the
Seine and along in front of these different great landscapes and buildings, but I thought it could be explosive, including a lot of people didn't like this, but the Marie Antoinette number.
Oh, I thought that was awesome.
I thought that was awesome.
No, that was insane.
I
That
thought
was
this
great.
was incredible. So let's hear a little bit.
It was edgy.
And we'll hear how edgy. This is a little bit of heavy metal band Gojira performing the French revolutionary song Ah Ça ira at the opening ceremony.
Ah, ça ira, ça ira, ça ira. Les aristocrates à la lanterne. Ah, ça ira, ça ira, ça ira. Les aristocrates, on les pendra.
Edgar, you fit entirely too well.
I know. Wait a second. I look over and wait. Were you there?
No.
One of them holding Marie Antoinette's head.
Can we talk for a second about the sort of like the ghost of Les Miserables that was like acrobating through
Yes.
the entire city with the,
Wasn't it with the
torch,
torch?
like kind of doing like parkour all over the place?
all
What did
over
we
the-
think of that? That was
I thought it was
wild.
cool.
I thought it was kind of cool too.
I thought all of it was cool. I really do. I know there was controversy. I know that they're the dance, but I really do think that it's what we all expected, and I think it was even more than that.
Well, and let's move to the end of the ceremony. And we forecasted this last week on the show because everybody was talking about Celine Dion and knowing that she was going to be in Paris, hoping that she would be able to sing, because if you've seen the documentary that's playing on Amazon right now, I Am Celine, where she talks about having stiff person syndrome, and you see just the assault that she is under from her own system, and how for so long she couldn't even sing without it coming out as a screech. And then we see her ending, we'll hear it right here. Here's the inimitable Celine Dion performing Edith Piaf's Hymne de l'Amour atop the Eiffel Tower during the Olympic opening ceremony.
Nous aurons pour nous l'éternité dans le bleu de toute l'immensité dans le ciel, plus de problème.
That was just, first of all, it was just magisterial filming to swoop down into the Eiffel Tower and see her in her white dress just beautifully lit against that backdrop, and understand her presence just sort of hovering almost angelic-like in that white dress above Paris, and knowing that she had this return. It was staggering.
It was unbelievable.
Stunning.
I mean,
it was
incredible.
It was literally breathtaking, and it also, that it took place on the Eiffel Tower, and the Eiffel Tower at night lit up in the way that it was lit up. I mean, it's kind of amazing the way that structure still sort of stands as this incredible, iconic thing that you kind of never get sick of looking at.
Or ever.
No,
it's
unbelievable.
I think I feel like as watching these Olympics and every year, it's just such. I mean, when it happens, it's such a thrill. Is the theme of resilience, and I think of her, and I think of Simone Biles. I think of like all of these Olympians really coming together and putting on their best show. And I don't even know what it took for her to do that, but to come out like that after suffering so much that she's had to go through, and just be brilliant and really make the games what they are. It was like, that was the opening. That was like, this is what it's going to be like.
You're right, and the perfect connection. Well, let's talk about something a little more controversial. And this is another number from the opening ceremony that a lot of people later construed to be The Last Supper. And this is when we had a group that was recreating certainly a table scene, and we were told later that it was based on the Dutch 17th century painting The Feast of the Gods. This is the Olympics, so we're talking about the gods. We have Dionysus and the goddess of the pagan god of the Seine River, but other people didn't see that. They saw the assemblage as representing the last summer. So, which is true? I have to say yes. I feel like if you look at it and you take your images away, I think it was both provocative and definitely stemming from this 17th century painting.
So you do. You think it,
Edgar and I say yes to both.
You say yes.
You think it was the Last Supper?
It was making comment on that.
I think there's no ignoring that it had its strong similarities. And it's not to say that they were deriding the Last Supper by any stretch of the imagination, but I think because you had drag queens participating in this, and you had, therefore, religious conservatives stepping forward, here in this country with the House Speaker stepping forward, I can see where they could draw that. But you can also see parallels to that Dutch painting.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, also, there's a few things with that. Like, to your point, even if it is trying to evoke that painting, right? That's like it's not a picture of the Last Supper. Right. It was like a painting. It itself was an interpretation of an event. That's probably not what it looked like. You know, they are largely bunch of white people around a table in that painting, which is probably likely not what Jesus and his disciples looked like.
But
Go
wait
ahead.
a second.
Go ahead.
Because they said they absolutely in no way were inspired by the Last Supper. And then there was a museum in Dijon, France that said, this is the feast of the gods. It hinted at the true inspiration behind the Olympic ceremony and talks about how the painting reminds them of this painting. And it was looked much like the Last Supper, but it was not the Last Supper. And it was really depicting gods in a moment of revelry. That's where they feel that this image and this whole production came from, not the Last Supper. So
that's what they say now.
I know, right. I know, but this is perfect.
Well, this also goes to something we talk about a lot in this show, which is you put art out into the world, and then people have different interpretations.
Yeah, and your point, I think, is valid, Jared, which is to say that even if it was a direct reference to the Last Supper, there is no derision here, and I don't know. I mean, I suppose I can't see taking offense to the idea of saying, like, here is an inclusive group of people mimicking the Last Supper. Like, that's kind of the Jesus message, right? Like,
or mimicking another painting. But I mean, what bothers me is the threats, the online threats that they're getting, that the vitriol and. And then they were saying, it didn't matter what we did, we were going to get negative reaction anyway. So we're just going to he just wanted to, Barbara Butch just wanted to put it out there and do the best possible that they could do to present this community, this sense of community.
Well, because it becomes a question of if you're going to depict the Last Supper, who gets to depict that? And
right.
What we're hearing is there's only a select group that gets to depict the Last Supper.
And apparently you can only depict it exactly as this one painting.
One painting.
By Da Vinci, which again is a painting.
Right.
Well, let's move on to as we start to see the Olympics play out, and one of the big stories, of course, is Simone Biles, who is now the most honored gymnast in I think it's Olympic history, right? I had to check even before we came over to make sure that I still have this correct because she's just winning so much. She's the most decorated gymnast.
She just won 2 more gold medals right now while you were talking.
Yeah, exactly.
She didn't. I'm just
exactly.
It feels like it though.
But as we always see with these stories, there is a secondhand narrative that occurs because there is this beef going on with people former colleagues who are deriding the team as being lazy. This is coming out of
just so interesting.
Yeah, somebody out of the Tokyo Olympics looking at this year's Olympics, but Simone Biles is just rising above it all. It's easy to do when you're also very winning, but I love that she's trotted out the goat necklace.
I know that was
the
a
diamond
flex,
goat
right?
necklace.
So she's got the necklace with the goat on it.
And why shouldn't she, right?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I mean, it's really interesting that Skinner would pick this team to say that she just doesn't think that they're up to par. And I think that, for Simone, who is really the captain of this team, is really the one who's been such a mentor to these to the team and to help them get to where they are and to talking them off a ledge and to putting their best foot forward and then just to blow it out of the water and win gold and then win gold in the, she wins gold in the all around. I think it's just sort of, I think she was just sort of like, don't say that. Like, these are my people. These are my girls. We're in it together. And so to hear that from a former athlete, to say that about other athletes, I think that's something that really sort of pushed her to the edge.
It's certainly it's certainly outside of the Olympic spirit. But I will say that I think it's interesting too to see. I kind of like seeing it. Like, the idea of some level of bravado has long been a part of sports and long been associated with male sports. And I think it's cool to see, you know, as women's sports have continued to like show that like, hey, the boundaries that you thought were there to women's sports are not there. We're seeing women athletes do things that I think even like half a generation ago people thought they were never going to get to. And I like to see like it's cool to see a little of that bravado, wearing the goat and like going back at your critics and saying like, how you like me now?
Yeah, exactly. And I love the name that they gave themselves, because the team always gives themselves a particular name, and it was F around and find out. Talk about bravado. Talk about like them.
Great.
Like,
Talk
we're
about
just
being
gonna,
provocative.
Yeah, talk about being provocative.
Well, also talking about what Edgar was just saying and things we never thought we could see before. How about Gabriel Medina and this photograph that has surfaced? And the story behind this, actually, Lisa, I should let you tell it because you were the one who brought it to our attention as we began to understand this backstory. If people want to look it up right now, I'm sure everybody has seen it on their Instagram feeds and their social media feeds, but it's this amazing picture of Brazilian Olympic surfer Gabriel Medina, who is hovering above the water. How did this come to be?
Unbelievable. I was watching the surfing, by the way, and it's incredible. I mean, it's incredibly dangerous, actually. And then just
the
sitting
wall
there,
of skulls.
Yeah. Oh my God. Right. The wall of skulls, and of course they're wearing
surfing.
helmets because this is really dangerous. And so the photographer who knows him, he's the world champion, world class surfer, knows him. So he knows that every time that he comes out of a wave, he usually pops up somewhere. So he was just actually waiting, I think, for that moment, and to have that longest wave of the Olympics and like crushing it, because it was stressful. You know, they sit there and wait for the wave to come, and then he just actually caught it, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's photoshopped. Oh, that's AI," and he's like, "Actually, no, this is an actual digital photograph." And I just thought that was amazing, and it's beautiful. He's just hovering.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something which I think is really interesting. In some ways, if you look at this story and you sort of unpack it, it is, to me, the best way that in the world that we're in now, like, you know, photography in the way that we knew it before and modern technology come together. Because as you said, he has covered surfing before.
Right.
He knew, he has done this, so he has this background. As a photojournalist, he was in the right spot, and he sort of knew it. He said he's been very open about it. He was like, I took 4 shots. I kind of knew that maybe something was going to be good. I took 4 shots. I got a little lucky, which is what it takes.
Yep.
And other photographers are right around him taking the same landscape.
But also the technology piece is that his camera was wired, and so the way it worked is every photo he took immediately went back to the home office where they're looking through, and they identified right away, whoa, magic moment. They got that out into the world almost immediately, and it blew up. He was still photographing.
He had no idea.
And he had no idea, and his phone started blowing up because all of a sudden he took the photograph of the Olympics.
And I love when he says, I thank you so much. I really appreciate that you appreciated my photo. I'm like, do you have any idea
He's
what
like,
you just
I
did?
clicked the button at the right time.
What any self-effacing journalist says. You just happen to be there right time, and good luck, as he said. Well, let's talk about the commentators now. We were also forecasting this last week, wondering what it was going to be like as we see this move away from traditional sports broadcasters. Not completely. We still see the voices, the authorities in sport that we've always seen. However, they're mixed in with people like Kelly Clarkson and somebody who is just surfaced. I don't even mean to laugh because I think he is such a great commentator, but Snoop Dogg. So here's a little bit of Snoop Dogg's color commentary, what he shared on the events themselves in addition to the opening ceremonies. He is weighing in on a heated badminton match between the United States and China.
Oh, I love this badminton right here. This is a great rally right here between China and the U.S. right here. As you see, it don't stop to the casket drop. They rocking and rolling, back and forth. Give me that. No, I need that. Nope, over here. Nope, over there. What about over there? Nope, what about there? Nope, give me that. I need that. That too. Nope, sit down somewhere. Get out. Wait a minute. Hold it. Way up in the sky. Now down. Back up. Over there. Now over here. Get out the way. Move. I told you we need that.
I mean, and just like a journalist, he has a very legitimate, sincere, and earnest interest in all of the sports. Not just some of them, it seems, but all of them.
Unbelievable.
He has been the best thing about the broadcast. By far. Like he's been everywhere, right? He pops up sort of late at night when they're doing studio stuff. He's doing field pieces where he's out with the basketball team. You know, he's doing these fun little commentary things. His outfits are insane. He looks high as a kite half of the time. He's hanging out with families. Like
he's got the shirts. He
he's Where's Waldo of the Olympics. Like it's just
which
kind of
were all designed before he went to the
Yes,
Olympics.
exactly. So he had
Most
those
of them.
designed. I love the fact that someone called him the emotional support dog for the Olympics.
That's a great line.
He's just so loving. He's loving every minute of it. It's sort of like seeing through his eyes about these Olympians, that he's truly celebrating them. He feels honored to be there. I mean, I love it. I do. I love his
best of
commentary.
America.
And everyone's just like waiting for him to be there, and it's like
he
he's
is
there.
what America needed right now in some ways.
It's carrying the torch. People are like, why is he carrying the torch? And now you're like, wow, of course he should be. He is like USA, everything USA.
And it's also wholesome. It's so legitimate, and it's not put on at all.
And it's so fresh.
Yeah,
right.
It's great.
Right. It's like
so he's our Olympic gold medal winner already for commentary.
Yes, except for the guy who dove in the guy and went to get the cap out of the pool when the swimmers were swimming. He's one of them too.
Well,
I guess I missed that one.
Snoop also did a little piece highlighting him and how great he was. So Snoop was
the bathing
Snoop's
cap
all
guy,
over it.
bathing cap guy.
All that plus AI Al Michaels, which we won't even get time to get to today.
I will say the celebrity stuff. The rest of it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. I think some of it's working, some of it's not.
Was funny. He's been funny reporting. I love when Scarlett Johansson. He was like, why are you going to Tahiti? Like, you don't even know anything about surf. Like, what are you doing?
And he's wants like, to capture great surfer photographs.
And he like hurt his foot or something. I mean, I think it's been good. I think that NBC needed it. I think that they have had low ratings in the Olympics in the past, and I think that they're really trying.
It's been a rebound.
Yeah, it's really been trying. But I think that either way, it would have been a great.
For the world too, because everybody is talking about it. It's nice to have something positive to talk about.
Yes,
well, coming up, speaking of positive, one of the largest contemporary art museums in the world, MoCA, marks its 25th anniversary. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture programming.
Get ready for story time.
The lights flare bright white. We are rocking like a tilt-a-whirl.
Everyday people.
The future survival of an entire species in our hands.
Personal stories.
And I decide to move to the Czech Republic and make a living as a basketball player. Believe it or not, I'm not that good at basketball.
Stories from the stage. Sunday night at 7 on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And North Shore Music Theater, presenting the comedy musical Tootsie, inspired by the film starring Dustin Hoffman. On stage at Bill Haney's North Shore Music Theater, August 13th through August 25th. Tickets at nsmt.org. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from medical bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
I'm Judy Ewell in for Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, local residents and experts tell us how sealing no-fault evictions could impact renters in Massachusetts. Also, why state lawmakers ended their formal session without approving major bills. Plus, today on the Joy Beat, we'll introduce you to Friends of the Blue Hills, the nonprofit responsible for preserving that area's great natural beauty. Those stories and more starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
This is The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, here with co-host Edgar B. Hilrick III and Culture Show contributor Lisa Simmons. She's the artistic and executive director of the Roxbury International Film Fest and program manager at Mass Cultural Council. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes the return of Great Scott, the legendary music venue closed during the pandemic, but now it has a new home in Allston, just a few blocks from its original spot. This is a club that has been around for almost 50 years. It was so beloved right up until the time it closed because you could always catch great acts coming up, like Phoebe Bridgers, just a whole, we won't even go down the list of the extraordinary people who played at that club. In addition to that, they had great drinks and a bar and really low ticket prices. It was very, very accessible. It did not survive the pandemic, but great news. And this is a terrific confluence that I think is a model going forward, because in this city where real estate is so high, it's nearly impossible for arts organizations, if they haven't already had a foothold, to have their own space. And this is a partnership between a music proprietor, somebody behind the Boston Music Awards, a developer who just built the hugely luxurious Raffles Hotel here in the Back Bay, where they have bought this property, this piece of property in Alston's, that they can have Great Scott. They can also have it alongside O'Brien's Pub, a smaller club with just under 100 seats. And this means they always own the building. This means they can probably stay there for as long as they want, and hopefully will.
Yeah, I think you hit the most important thing there moving forward, which is that they own the building.
Yeah.
Like that is absolutely enormous. And to your point, this was a venue not just because of its location, but because of its size. That you get those legendary acts on their way up, but it also is a place where they fill out their schedule with local musicians.
Yeah.
So like that was the beauty of Great Scott. And I mean, I loved the venue. I can't tell you how many shows that I have seen over the years at Great Scott. And it was exactly, sometimes it was a local band because I knew somebody who knew somebody who's like, our band's playing, and it was at Great Scott. Sometimes it was somebody up and coming. And it's just like there's been a dearth of that size club. And this is not just a Boston problem. This is in cities all over the country. This is fantastic that this is happening, both for the musicians who are going to be having a spot when they're touring through town, but also for people who play in this town.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, what they said is to restore this Boston music scene. And we know we have MGM, and we know we have all these other big venues. You've got Fenway. But I think you're right. I think it's places like, Bunratty's, the Rat, all of these places that we lost. And even the Paul's Mall, like all of these great jazz clubs, it's sort of like really changed the makeup of the city and changed the whole, independent music scene. And so, I mean, I think it's exciting. I think it's really interesting that it's multi-use.
Yeah.
That they're really focusing on one of the other big issues in Boston and Cambridge, and that is housing. And so I'm excited that they're talking about doing residencies. I mean, I think it's really going to add so much to the Boston music scene.
Yeah, and I think it's also important for a neighborhood like Alston, which is like continually, I mean, it is a college neighborhood.
Yep.
And like you need to have places like this. And, that's part of the ecosystem of Boston, and why students like to come here, to go to school here, because there's all these schools, because there's neighborhoods like this.
What also struck me is that there is a time for everything, and sometimes venues do need to close because their time has moved on. That wasn't the case here, because they also had $300,000 come in when they announced their closing. That money is going to be put toward outfitting the place, which by the way, they want to keep the grit of the original.
Yeah.
Don't go there tonight. This is just getting underway. It probably won't open until 2026, but it's great news. Well, speaking of rescues, the Marcel Breuer modernist masterpiece in Wellfleet has been saved. This has been another struggle, talking about what's happening all across the country, and we're talking about historic homes. We were just talking about Marilyn Monroe's home. Actually, that was saved out in Los Angeles, but right here in Wellfleet, Breuer, who is one of the famed architects of the mid-century, famed designers, his furniture, people covet that furniture now because of this love of mid-century. He had retreated to Wellfleet for the summers with this Bauhaus mentality that you had to integrate artists into the woods and create a community. And lo and behold, they were actually able to just purchase, a group was able to purchase his home from his own son. And the best part of it, so much of it is still intact, so they get to open it as a place where he actually lived and how he lived in it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the building itself is totally cool. It was built to look like a camera on a tripod, and it does, which is really, really, really excellent. And yeah, like this is just, I think this is an example of like in the marketplace, like people came together and they're making something happen, right? The Sun wanted to sell it,
right?
And this group said, let's find a way to buy it.
I mean, it's just like the music venue, right? I mean, you understand that there's this cultural space that is so important that it can't be developed into 500 different condos and whatever, that it really needed to maintain its cultural integrity. And I think that it's really exciting. I love that, you drive through the Pitch Pines and you're in that space. It's a creative space. It always has been. It was part of that whole era where everyone was growing up sort of together and creating amazing work. And so I think it's really exciting that this group has stepped in and that they're going to pay for it and they're going to buy it. They still have to raise some money for it, but I don't think that they're going to have a problem with that. And then you turn it into residencies, and then that's the way you keep this, cultural space going and supporting all these other people.
And there are a bunch of other modernist cottages that this group has saved because this isn't the only one there. And speaking of the mixed use thing, Jared, that's kind of what's happened. They found a model here that works, right? Because they do host residency programs for artists, but you can also they rent it out for a week at a time for some of these so that you're making some money. I mean, to me, that's an excellent solution.
Right, and they want to bring back everyone to be in this space, to have these creative conversations, to learn from each other. I don't know, I think it's exciting.
Yeah, we're often not good in this country of saving these spaces. We look back throughout history and you think, how could people in the 1940s say, or we have that perfect example here in Boston where we tore down our opera house. We actually had an opera house at one point. We tore it down and it still hasn't been replaced in terms of a building built for opera. We do have a building named the Opera House. Right. So it's nice to know that we're doing a course correction here. Well, now on to the Berkshires for MoCA, one of the largest contemporary art museums in the world. Since its founding, it's had the aim of showing art you can't see anywhere else with its football field-sized gallery space. It was also intended to spur an economic revival in North Adams. Now it's marking its 25th anniversary this summer, which is a great moment to take stock, 25 years is, of this experiment in Western Massachusetts that, in my estimation, has largely succeeded for how it has become this international showcase for contemporary art.
Oh, I mean, I think it absolutely has done what it was supposed to do when it opened 25 years ago. I think it's really interesting that they talk about that Christy Edmonds, who's only the second director of MoCA in 25 years, and she just came on recently. I mean, but what I think is really interesting that she talks about how priorities have shifted in today's cultural institutions, and it's not about what you have, but more about what you're doing with the community and how you're supporting the community. And the community of North Adams is a very different community, right? So they're talking about how perhaps maybe MoCA might have done this for the international world and for artists, but maybe not so much for the citizens of North Adams. And so I think that right now, that's really what she's trying to do, is how can MoCA help lift up the citizens and the folks that are in North Adams.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing,
cool place.
The other thing is it sort of, and I think we had a piece of sound in the top of the show that said this. It sort of feels inevitable now, but by all accounts, this has been 25 years of improvisation to make this happen. This was a pretty ambitious swing, and they've never really kind of had enough money to make the institution that they have made. So, there's been a lot of sort of improvisation to get to where we are. So I think you're right. Now at 25, now when they say, okay, where have we come in these 25 years? How do we adjust to have a sustainable future? And to your point, you're right. I think it's really good that they're asking, and how does this fit in with North Adams as a community?
Right.
And if people don't know what we're talking about, it's in North Adams, farthest reaches of the state. It's 300,000 square feet of indoor gallery space, 15,000 square feet of indoor performing arts space. It's set on 24 acres because it's all basically rehabbing the Sprague Electric Company factory that was out there and just looking at opportunity to use arts as an economic engine. There's a great documentary called Museum Town, and here's David Byrne of the Talking Heads in that documentary about the making of MoCA. He's describing having one of the first exhibitions at a critical time for the museum during their efforts to get state funding, and that's when Governor Bill Weld drops by.
The governor was coming to see the place, and there was a tipping point in state and financial support for the development of MoCA. And there was some trepidation because my stuff was had pictures of drug paraphernalia and lots of other elements that were less than totally savory.
Goes down smooth when I get a hit of the funky, smelly green shit.
By the way, Governor Weld turned out to be a Talking Heads fan, and he said that David Byrne's art and the concept of MoCA was counterintuitive enough to justify state dollars. So it was this great amalgamation of government stepping in, recognizing the value of the arts. I think we're seeing it again now with this administration in terms of economic development. But over the years, they have brought in artists who are just blue chip at this point. They weren't even then. You can find Louise Bourgeois, Jenny Holzer, James Turrell, People travel around the world to see his light sculptures, and really in ways that you can not see at many other museums because they just don't have the space to present this grand work.
They don't have that. There's nowhere else that has this warehouse space that can fit these amazing pieces. And so I think that that's what's really exciting. But I do think it's funny that she talks about herself more as an urban planner now, as a museum director. But I'm really excited about how they're thinking about the water, the hydroelectrics, like they're going to change some of the structure of it because it's so old, and thinking about how that's going to benefit these.
It's sort of the question. I mean, it's interesting to think of, right? This was through the 70s and 80s. This was a one company town because of this electric thing, and so if it's a one company now, and that company is the art museum, that they might be forging a model for how this can happen in other communities, which I think is a very good thing.
Yes.
Well, coming up, it's Follow-Up Friday with an update on the stories we've been covering, from those climate protesters slinging soup on art to the Mona Lisa on the move. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
In 1974, about 7% of Boston public school teachers were black. As part of the desegregation mandate, the court ordered that number to be no less than 20%. 50 years later,
it's incredibly frustrating that we are still having these conversations.
Critics say the district is still struggling with hiring and retaining black teachers.
The progress that we were fighting for has not been realized.
Part of our Boston Busing at 50 series, you can find this story online at gbhnews.org/busing.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Commonwealth Shakespeare Company, presenting The Winter's Tale, Shakespeare's captivating parable of betrayals and renewed hope, is this summer's free Shakespeare on the Boston Common, July 16th through August 4th. comshakes.org.
And the University of Massachusetts Amherst, the Commonwealth's flagship public university. You can learn more about research, innovation, and economic impact for the Commonwealth at umass.edu. That's umass.edu.
When the best of the best compete at the Olympics, world records are broken. Not so many this year, though. Don't blame the athletes, blame the shallow Olympic swimming pool.
Decisions for the Paris Games have not been taken in general to beat records.
All that and more news from Paris next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-host Edgar B. Herwick III and Culture Show contributor Lisa Simmons. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes UNESCO, which has added 24 new World Heritage Sites for 2024. So we thought this is interesting. We thought this is good, ostensibly, because we want World Heritage Sites that are protected and funded. But we also, I know, Edgar, you were very much wondering, what does this also really mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, it sort of feels like you hear about this. I think the average person goes like, "Oh yeah, UNESCO World Sites. I
know those.
I sort of
remember those.
I
from
sort
high
of
school.
remember that those exist." But then I was like, "But what does it actually mean? Like, what does it actually mean to be designated a site?" And I was kind of like, "This is maybe an opportunity for us to talk about that." And it sounds like, as you said, Jared, it's ostensibly like a good thing, but it's not without its critics out there who say like, there's a little bit of a double-edged sword with this.
Right, exactly. But I mean, I think that the reason behind it is because make sure that a cultural property isn't targeted, right? So in times of war, in times of other situations, that it's a UNESCO site and you should not bomb that site, right? And then the other thing is that they offer technical assistance, right, towards these sites for renovations and things like that. So it is important for these places to get on the UNESCO list, so that in some point in time, if that comes to that point, that there are dollars that can go to help renovate those spaces.
And places on this list include Stonehenge, the Taj Mahal, Chichen Itza.
Right.
And this year, some of the new ones are gold mines in Japan, a national park in Brazil, a monastery to your point, Lisa, in the Gaza Strip.
And
However,
a huge bog in Scotland.
And a huge
Apparently, they've been campaigning for 40 years to get this accepted. The bog, yeah.
Well,
it's one of the biggest carbon stores in the entire world, apparently.
And also, apparently, they have to be careful what they wish for, because there are people who have described UNESCO-side, which is once you declare it as a World Heritage Site, then people become aware of it, and then they want to go visit it. And places like Venice can't handle the crush of tourism, so that becomes this equation. It's great to have the money.
In Barcelona?
Well, yeah, maybe.
No, but you're right, and that apparently, that's an issue. Like, there's this apparently there's this neighborhood in Panama City that years back got designated as a UNESCO site, and what has happened over a course of years after that happened is it's become completely gentrified. The people who live there have been sort of priced out, and now it's nothing like what it was, even though it still looks like it looked, right? So there is the downside potentially to this.
Right, because people put it on their bucket list, and I have to go see the 5,000 sites of UNESCO.
Or you can just look on the web and find it that way.
National Geographic.
Exactly. It's Friday, and that can only mean one thing.
It's time for Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday.
Yes, it's Follow-Up Friday, bringing you updates on some of the stories we've been covering, which includes tomato soup for the climate activist's soul. The activist who splashed Van Gogh's sunflowers with soup will likely go to jail. So we've been talking about this, and is there value in climate activists drawing attention to their cause by... Well, I'm going to tip my hat by saying punching down and taking down museums and artists, because I don't think this is at all appropriate. But apparently neither does a judge in London, because these two climate protesters who splashed the soup on Van Gogh's painting at the National Gallery in London, will be sentenced in September. And he has been not shy with his sentences, including sentencing people not too long ago for tying up traffic in England to a 4 to 5 year sentence. So it looks like they're going to jail.
Yeah. They were told to emotionally and practically prepare to go to prison.
22.
Yeah, two 22-year-olds.
They're 22 years old.
4 to 5 years, though? I mean, let's imagine it is something like 4 to 5 years. Does that feel a little much?
Punitive?
I don't know. I actually don't know what the answer here is. I don't know what an appropriate sentence might be.
I don't either. And what kind of jail, I'm not sure. But what I think is interesting is that you're going to impose a sentence of 4 to 5 years on someone who does this, right? But yet their bail conditions were that they must not carry glue or paint or any adhesive substance in a public place, and they must not visit any galleries or museums.
This is because they also glued their hands to the wall.
Right, they glued their hands to the wall. But I just think it's like this, their bail, but yet you're going to give them 4. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in September, what they do get. I mean, but I don't condone them doing what they did.
As I say, it's punching down.
I understand they have a passion.
It hurts
for climate
museums.
Change. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of museums, we've been talking a lot about the Mona Lisa too. She's on the move.
Wow. Yeah.
Again. It looks like she was going to the basement for a while. We don't know where those plans stand, because the Louvre was talking about moving her into the basement so that more people could have a better experience, because so many people were saying that they showed up, they saw the Mona Lisa, and she was way disappointing.
Yeah.
So the other issue that's arisen lately is there's an Egyptian archaeologist who has gone on the repatriation bandwagon, saying that the Mona Lisa needs to return to Italy, because that's where Leonardo da Vinci painted her and conceived her, and so that's its home. But we see that this is not going to likely turn out.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a giant question mark whether or not there's any validity to this idea. I mean, this is the same notion that led to the Mona Lisa being stolen back in the early 1900s.
Exactly.
Right? There was somebody from this town in Italy who also kind of bought into this theory. And the theory was essentially that Napoleon kind of swooped the Mona Lisa up when they were plundering Italy. Whereas I think probably, I mean, most scholars, it sounds like, agree that likely what happened is that the Mona Lisa was actually completed
in France,
which is where Da Vinci eventually went to, and also purchased legally by Francis I of France.
Who is Leonardo's patron.
So it sounds like this is probably a case where, this is not a stolen
I don't think they're sweating bullets.
I don't think so either.
But it's interesting because this archaeologist has also been campaigning for what sounds like much more legitimate, like the Rosetta Stone to be returned, for example, which feels maybe like that one
And I feel like this is
there's
a
little more
thing, right?
validity
We're in this era now where a lot of this repatriation is happening. It's happening with Native American. It's happening with African artifacts. It's happening with a lot of things. So, I mean, it's very timely that he believes that. But I just think it is interesting that this comes up every once in a while, that the Mona Lisa belongs in Italy. And actually, it doesn't necessarily belong in Italy.
It's
Leonardo
not an ambiguous trail.
moved to France. He finished it in France.
Yeah.
And so they're going to claim it. But I know, I understand what you mean. Everyone goes and it's small, but it's still spectacular.
It is spectacular. As we see all the celebrities at the Olympics, they get their private viewing.
Go on social media right now. They're all there alone with the Mona Lisa.
You know something that I think maybe I want to be an Olympic athlete just
to get a little Mona Lisa FaceTime
in person without those people around you.
Of course, the Olympics probably won't be in France that year.
Oh, that's right.
See, that's the problem.
There you go.
Just a couple minutes
left.
left.
Think about.
Well, so we've also been talking about Governor Maura Healey's economic development bill, which offered a live theater tax credit to both lure pre-Broadway shows here and to support local theaters staging big budget productions. Last night, the legislature failed to take that up, so the live theater tax credit is not alive at the moment. We reached out to the governor for comment, and her office released a statement to the Culture Show this morning, reading in part, "The book should not be closed on this bill. It is too important. My administration will continue to work with legislative leaders and urge everyone to find a way to pass these economic priorities before the end of the session." So this is something that fell victim to other major issues, such as adding liquor licenses for equality here in the city of Boston. They did pass housing, so that was something that was very successful, but also the governor had wanted to invest in life sciences. By all accounts, so did the House and the Senate. But this is a problem, as we know, in the state of Massachusetts, which has the second fewest of any state legislatures in terms of enacting law, because they wait until the last minute. They had so many months to act on this bill, which the governor had introduced, I think, late winter.
Oh, yes.
And they didn't pass it. And this means that this was supposed to be an injection of funding for the arts, especially for live theater, and it's not going to happen. And to me, the irony was, last night, as I was leaving Queen of Versailles, which is one of these pre-Broadway shows that has been playing for months, if any of the legislators had just looked out their window at the State House, looked across the Common, and looked down at the Colonial Theater, they would have seen the throngs of people. They would have seen the energy of the people who were showing up, who have been showing up for the last month and a half to see that show, not to mention the restaurants that are full and all of the business it brings. But no, none of them took the moment to do that, to realize what they were squandering by not acting on this earlier.
Yeah, and I think it's the entire economic development bill, right? So like you said, there are so many things within that bill that I'm hoping that they take up again in this next session. So as Governor Healey said, to hope to reintroduce this bill, because we know how important it is. We know how important, clearly, arts and culture to communities. People come to the theater, people go wherever, right? And then you're spending money, and we need that.
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me like obviously we have a little bit of a horse in this race because we're the culture show, right? But that said, I look at this and I understand that there are so many competing priorities for limited funds. There are a lot of things that are important in the state. However, I look at this and this to me seems like a no-brainer investment. It's not that much money on the scale of when we're thinking about the scale of an entire, the entire budget of a region or what have you. And it feels like this is something that study after study after study has demonstrated. This is a good way to spend your dollars because it ramps up economic activity in so many different ways.
Well, and the irony here is that obviously the governor supported this. Her administration introduced this bill. The House supported it. They passed it along, and so did the Senate, because they had actually removed it at one point, and then they reinstalled it because this was also going to benefit local theaters. So you could have your Huntington Theater, your Lyric Stage Company with big budget productions also benefit from this. So everybody was on board. Yeah. They just didn't get their act together to do this in time, which puts them, again, at the bottom of the ranks of the states in this nation.
To have to start all over again.
Right.
But
except unless they can go into a special session, but then it can be tanked by just one lawmaker objecting to it.
Well, you see, Jared, you've been in this town covering, not just arts and culture, but just news in this town for a long time. It's just a funny way that they do business at the State House. This wait and wait and wait, and this seeming game of chicken that comes around every year. It's
very unfortunate to see what falls victim to it.
Absolutely.
That's the State House trying to shut me down right now. No, that's our lightning. That's signaling our lightning round, which is the stories that caught our attention this week. Edgar, let's start with you. What's the headline that caught your attention?
So the thing that caught my attention is that the person responsible for the creation of tiramisu apparently died at the age of 81 this week. And my reaction
how
was...
is that? Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Jared, because that was
How
my
is that not 281?
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. Somebody created tiramisu in the 70s? But apparently that is what happened. Robert Linguanotto, who was a chef in Italy, he, along with Alba Campiol, I'll probably say that wrong, but she was the wife of this restaurateur. He was the pastry chef at this restaurant. They have sort of competing stories about how it really came together. She says her mother used to make her this sweet treat, and she asked Robert to sort of help her develop it. He says one time he accidentally dropped some mascarpone into the sugar and was like, "Oh,
into
delicious!"
The lady
Either way, they worked together and they came up with tiramisu, and it first went on the menu at this restaurant where they worked in 1972 and sort of spread around the world from there. Now, there are some competing claims out there that say, like, no, this was from hundreds of years earlier in brothels in Italy.
Right.
There's at least one guy in Baltimore who's like, no, I'm from that town in Italy and I invented it. But either way, tiramisu only around since the 70s.
Oh my gosh.
Really?
It feels like a 50s dessert, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Like a
casserole.
1750s. It feels like a 1750s
Like
dessert.
a casserole dessert or something. I
Anyway,
love it.
delicious.
Delicious.
And sorry to see him leave the mortal coil.
But at least we still have tiramisu.
Yes.
Lasting, delicious legacy. Lisa, what headline caught your attention?
Really quickly, so the Newport Jazz Festival opens tonight, actually, really exciting. Jazz and poetry are reunited. This story struck me because I had no idea that Langston Hughes appeared at a symposium at the Newport Jazz Festival in 1956. And he hosted and curated a blues conversation and a concert, and then found himself writing lyrics from Muddy Waters and Nina Simone. So I think this is amazing that this new artist, Asia Monet, who is a poet, is going to be performing tonight at the Newport Jazz Festival, and I just think it's really, I really think it's exciting. I think you don't think about poetry marrying so much with jazz. You think about, hip hop, and you think about all these other forms of music, and I just think it's going to be really exciting to see and have that come back to the Newport Jazz Festival and have the two married to each other. So it'll be great.
Any venue for poetry is fantastic.
Yes.
We love poetry on the Culture Show. Well, the headline that caught my attention this week was, I think we can all be rewarded now for just spending our time on social media, because there was an art historian who was scrolling through on X, formerly known as Twitter, and suddenly, as he was looking at this event in an historic location in England, noticed that there was a painting of Henry VIII on the wall in the background, and he realized just by the structure of the painting and the framing around it that this had gone missing from the 1500s. They knew this whole series of paintings existed. It was created by an artist who is largely unknown in the 1500s, but he saw it, and turns out that was the actual painting. It wasn't like these questionable, I found the Gardner paintings because I was looking at real estate listings in Drayton and saw a painting on a bedroom
and I went
wall.
in the basement, and there it was.
That was clearly like a poor reproduced poster.
Right, exactly.
Like, there's the original.
Or just AI just putting it there because it liked it that day. But no, the actual painting existed, and apparently this isn't the first time he's done this. He also found a rare 17th century artist, Joan Carlyle, by looking at a wedding photo from 2018. So he's
not just scrolling; he's actually scrolling and looking to find these things. So be careful. What's in your background when you're taking pictures?
Sitting around like scouring the internet looking for lost works of art. What a way to spend your time.
Hey, it's like those things when you go to the beach to look for
metal detectors.
Yeah. Exactly. And now you can just sit on your sofa and do it. Well, that is all for this edition of The Culture Show. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thank you to Lisa Simmons for being here. Lisa is the Artistic and Executive Director of the Roxbury International Film Festival and Program Manager at Mass Cultural Council and a Culture Show contributor. Monday on the show, we have the Indigo Girls, who've been enjoying a big Barbie boost. They join us ahead of their concert at Tanglewood. And Edgar will be back because you are chasing sea monsters in Nantucket.
Giant sea monster balloon is reported to be expected to be landing just off the coast of Nantucket. We'll be there to let you know if it happens.
And we'll be live hearing it happen
Yes.
with you. Thank you for doing that. Thanks today to the BPL technical and logistics crew, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cardena, Chris Hanks, and Amanda Francis. Also thanks to City Table, the Lennox Hotel, and the Newsfeed Cafe. I'm Jared Bowen. Have an arts and culture-filled weekend.
Where's Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library!
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Spend your after.
Ravel's Le Tombeau de Couperin. That's Stephen Osborne on piano. Jamie Kamak here for Greg Farisi. You're listening to Classical Radio Boston.
Classical Radio Boston is WCRB-FM 99.5 HD1 Lowell, Boston, WGBH-FM HD2 Boston, WCAI-FM HD2 Woods Hole, WJMF-FM HD1 Smithfield, Providence, and at classical.org.
3 o'clock and 90 degrees here in Boston. There's some rain on the way, apparently starting around 6, and fingers crossed it breaks this heat a little bit. Here's the Baltimore Consort.